Chapter 285. Jian Wufei slashed out with her sword and the brilliant sword light locked onto Chen Shui as it tore through the void. At the same time, Yu Chengfeng hesitated for a moment before attacking violently. His body seemed to transform into a wind dragon as he charged towards Chen Hao and Jian Wufei. "I'll deal with this woman." Sensing the aura of the two, Chen Hao's battle-intent soared as he suddenly sent a voice transmission to Chen Shui. As he spoke, he raised his sword to meet Jian Wufei. The reason why Chen Hao did this was not because Jian Wufei was stronger than Yu Chengfeng, but because he could sense that Jian Wufei's Mountain River Sword Dao was more dangerous and fierce. Especially the sword intent that it contained, it was extremely terrifying. If he was not careful, he could cause fatal damage to Chen Shui. As for the more violent Yu Chengfeng, he was more suitable for Chen Shui, who specialized in strange attacks. "All right. This," Chen Shui replied as her body flashed. She unleashed the power of the space attribute to the extreme as she charged towards Yu Chengfeng with lightning speed. "Your opponent is me." Swoosh. Chen Hao casually slashed out with his sword and blocked Jian Wufei's sword light as he charged towards Jian Wufei. "Ha! That's great. Little girl, it would be a pity to kill you. It's not too late to surrender. Yu Chengfeng, now is not the time to lust after beauty. This kid is hard to deal with. Let's end this quickly." When Yu Chengfeng saw that Chen Hao and Chen Shui had swapped opponents, he was overjoyed. When he heard that Jian Wufei had chosen to kill Chen Shui first, he was a little conflicted. After all, a beauty like Chen Shui was rare. It would be a pity if she was killed just like that. Therefore, when he saw that Chen Hao was charging towards Jian Wufei and Chen Shui was charging towards him, he said excitedly. However, before he could finish, Jian Wufei's cold voice interrupted him. Jian Wufei knew that Chen Hao must be very strong, but she didn't think that Chen Hao would be able to easily sever her sword will that had locked onto Chen Shui. "Don't worry, it's just a short while. Just don't let him escape. 10 moves. Within 10 moves I will subdue this chick." "Pa," Yu Chengfeng said arrogantly. At the same time, he opened his folding fan with a schwa sound and instantly started fighting with Chen Shui. Jian Wufei frowned. She had taken one step at a time. She had experienced countless life and death situations to reach her current position. Her calmness and survivability far surpassed that of ordinary people. She would never underestimate her opponent in any battle, especially when she truly fought Chen Hao. Even though they had only fought once, she could still sense how terrifying Chen Hao was. This feeling was not only because of his strength, but also because of Chen Hao's gaze that was as sharp as a sword, as well as his calm and collected aura that was as heavy as a mountain. This feeling was far more stressful than when she faced Yu Chengfeng. However, at this moment, she knew that it was impossible to control the lecherous Yu Chengfeng. With a cold snort, Jian Wufei's mind was completely immersed in the battle. A terrifying will of the sword emanated from her body and rushed towards Chen Hao. She slashed out with her sword and 2 rays of sword light appeared. What a strong will of the sword! Even Chen Hao, who was full of fighting spirit, couldn't help but praise her. The 2 rays of sword light that Jian Wufei shot out had completely different auras. One of them was heavy like a mountain and pressed down like Mount Tai, and it imperceptibly caused Chen Hao to arouse a feeling of powerlessness that was impossible to resist. It seemed as if he couldn't avoid it, and no matter how he resisted, he would be smashed into meat paste. On the other hand, the other was vast like an ocean and unfathomable, and it was like a continuous stream of furious waves that shook the heavens, wave after wave, and each wave was stronger than the last, and it was capable of drowning him at any moment. The only similarity was that the 2 rays of sword light were as fast as lightning. What was even more terrifying was that the 2 rays of sword light fused together and locked onto Chen Hao from all directions. Feeling the immense pressure, Chen Hao was shocked and excited at the same time. However, he didn't use brute force to break through. Instead, he immersed himself in the mysteries of his opponent's sword technique. His brain was spinning rapidly and his powerful perception was fully displayed at this moment. Shua! He stabbed out with his sword and instantly attacked the weak point of the fusion of the 2 rays of sword light. It was also the weakest point of the will of the sword. He seemed to have easily broken through Jian Wufei's attack. Seeing Chen Hao easily break through her 2 layers of mountain and sea without using brute force, Jian Wufei's face revealed a trace of shock. Nobody knew better than her that although Chen Hao's attacks seemed simple, if one didn't have great vision, great perception, and shocking courage, he wouldn't have dared to use so little strength to attack. If he wasn't careful, he would have been heavily injured. Yu Qingfeng used the same move to break through it with absolute strength. Chen Hao was originally in the advanced stage of the Golden Core stage. To be able to rank 6th in the test, he definitely has great overall abilities. He said that he was a disciple of a 3rd-rank sect. To be able to achieve what he has today, he must have experienced countless life and death situations. Such an opponent is even more terrifying than Yu Qingfeng. I can't let my guard down. Jian Wufei was truly shocked at this moment. However, even though she was shocked, she wasn't afraid at all. She didn't achieve what she had today through trickery. Constantly challenging her limits was her forte, not to mention that she still had the ability to save her life. What was there to fear? Bitch, it seems like you want to die. Then I'll fulfill your wish. Boom. On the other side, Yu Qingfeng was both furious and shocked when he saw Chen Shui, who seemed to have blended into space, evading his 10 moves in a row. He immediately raised his strength to the limit. He couldn't understand how such a beautiful woman like Chen Shui could withstand his killing intent that even a mid-nascent soul stage expert would fear. What surprised him even more was that his wind element that had just reached the early stage of the greater success stage seemed to have met its nemesis under Chen Shui's spatial profundity. He was fast, but Chen Shui was faster. Moreover, she kept on fighting him. She made him unable to use his strength. If this continued, even if he used 100 or 1,000 moves, he wouldn't be able to do anything to Chen Shui. You're not worthy, Chen Shui said in a cold voice. After she finished speaking, she actually stopped fighting and directly attacked with her sword. The more Chen Shui fought, the more confident she became. Her opponent was only half a step away from the original level. Even though his physique and potential were extremely high, allowing Yu Qingfeng's qi to be more powerful than Chen Shui's, the difference wasn't that big. The only thing that affected Chen Shui was her opponent's chilling killing intent. Luckily, Chen Shui had already understood the space element to the peak of the initial stage of the greater success stage. The space element was a powerful element that surpassed the 5 elements. Without time, space was king. Whether it was speed or profundity, it far surpassed the wind element. This allowed Chen Shui to be undefeatable. Of course, Chen Shui didn't know that if Yu Qingfeng wanted to kill her from the start, she would have been heavily injured. Sadly, Yu Qingfeng's lust killed her. To know that no matter how strong the killing intent was, without the intention to kill, it would lose its soul. How could it be strong? Now, even if Yu Qingfeng wanted to kill her, it was too late. Because the effect of killing intent was to kill with one strike. Then it would weaken, then it would be exhausted. Chen Shui had already gotten used to his killing intent. No matter how strong it was, it wouldn't have the desired effect. Ha! Is this the way of the sword? Bring it on. Let me see how strong a woman with a heart as vicious as a snake in scorpion is. Seeing Chen Shui's aura skyrocket, Chen Hao, who had been paying attention to Chen Shui all this time, praised her in his heart and relaxed completely. At this moment he arrogantly laughed at Jian Wufei. You don't know what's good for you. This. Jian Wufei suddenly thrust out her sword and spear. Originally, she had been holding back. After all, her cooperation with Yu Qingfeng was only temporary. If she and Chen Hao were to be seriously injured before Yu Qingfeng succeeded, then Yu Qingfeng wouldn't keep his promise and would kill her as well. But now, seeing that Yu Qingfeng couldn't suppress Chen Shui, she didn't dare to hold back anymore. Long-distance attacks could no longer satisfy her needs. Similarly, Chen Hao wasn't satisfied. In an instant, the two figures intertwined. Jian Wufei focused all of her energy and will of the sword Dao onto her sword. She slashed out again and again, each of her attacks aiming for the vitals of her enemies. She believed that Chen Hao would definitely not be able to catch her weakness in a close combat situation where she could unleash 100 swords in an instant. The mountain river sword technique was about using one's strength to suppress others. It was domineering. Slash after slash, every move was a strong attack. It was as if the entire world was in her hands. If they were on the same level, she would definitely be the one to win. Ding ding ding. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the sound of metal clashing and terrifying energy from the secret manual raged between the two of them. What shocked Chen Hao was that ever since he stepped into the world of cultivation, with the solitary sword technique in his hands, no one had ever been able to continuously attack him. After all, as long as he made a move, there would be a flaw. With a flaw, Chen Hao would be able to take the absolute initiative. But on Jian Wufei, there was an exception. Jian Wufei's strong attacks were like sparks, surpassing Chen Hao's reaction speed. Moreover, the terrifying sword intent caused Chen Hao to feel immense pressure. His mind and thoughts were greatly suppressed. Left with no choice, Chen Hao could only infuse the profoundness of the space attribute into the solitary sword art. Every time he swung out his sword, it was as if there was a vortex within it, using it to cause Jian Wufei's sword to deviate from its trajectory. Only then did he manage to deal with Jian Wufei's strong attacks. What Chen Hao didn't know was that Jian Wufei was even more shocked than him. In a situation where they didn't use their trump cards and fought in close combat, no one had ever been able to compete with her. Even Yu Chengfeng could only dodge. But Chen Hao, under her sharp, dense, and lightning-fast attacks, was able to hit her weak points 4 out of 5 times. What was even more shocking was that Chen Hao's every slash contained the space element's rotational force, swallowing her energy. It wasn't strange for the space element to be contained in a move that needed time to prepare. But to be able to contain it in a sword move at all times was too shocking. Third update, make up. Continue to work hard tomorrow. Chapter 286. Boom. Jian Wufei released a move with all her might as she retreated. At the same time, her aura began to soar. At this point, Jian Wufei knew that if she wanted to take down Chen Hao, she would have to use her trump card. You are indeed very strong. You are the first person to force me, Jian Wufei, to this extent. You should be proud of yourself. Now I will show you my true strength. Jian Wufei's eyes flashed. As she spoke, her aura began to change strangely. It was as if she had merged with the heavens and earth. A thick and majestic aura began to emanate from her body. It was as if she had transformed into a mountain. She slowly rose into the air. Boom boom boom, all of the heaven and earth spiritual energy within a radius of 3,000 feet suddenly began to gather towards Jian Wufei's body at an astonishing speed. Even more astonishing was that the small mountain behind Jian Wufei suddenly began to collapse. Even the ground was ripped apart, and countless hard rocks of various sizes flew into the air as Jian Wufei slowly raised her sword, hovering behind her. Jian Wufei's clothes fluttered in the wind and her expression was cold. An aura of absolute dominance spread out from her. Not to mention Chen Hao, who was bearing the brunt of it, even Yu Chengfeng and Chen Shui, who were fighting not far away, were greatly affected. Yu Chengfeng and Chen Shui couldn't help but be distracted by the battle between Chen Hao and Jian Wufei. They both retreated and stopped fighting. At this point, even though Yu Chengfeng didn't want to admit it, he knew that if he wanted to take down Chen Shui, he wouldn't be able to do it in a short period of time. I didn't expect Jian Wufei to be so strong. Is this the 5th level of the Mountain River Sword technique, dancing the mountains? It has to be. Drawing upon the power of the heavens and earth, dancing the mountains and mountains for me to use and suppress everything. Impressive, however, Jian Wufei is clearly using a skill that is beyond her limits. After she kills that brat Chen Hao, she will definitely suffer a huge backlash. Yu Chengfeng stared at Jian Wufei, his heart filled with shock, but he was also secretly pleased. He was shocked at Jian Wufei's strength, but he was pleased because Jian Wufei's actions had undoubtedly given him the perfect opportunity. In his battle with Chen Shui, he had indeed done his best. However, he hadn't used his trump card at all. That was because he knew very well that his cooperation with Jian Wufei was nothing more than working with a wolf. The result he wanted to see the most was for Chen Hao and Jian Wufei to both be severely injured. Bring it on. Boom. Sensing the immense pressure from Jian Wufei, Chen Hao's deep black eyes flashed with a brilliant light. His blood boiled and the arrogance and fighting spirit hidden deep within his bones completely erupted at this moment. His essence, energy, and spirit seemed to have materialized, turning into a straight line of smoke that soared into the sky. At the same time, Chen Hao gripped the five-elemental sword tightly in his right hand and slowly raised it up. Every time he raised it up a bit, the aura around him would rise up a bit. When the tip of the sword was pointed at Jian Wufei, who was hovering in the air, his entire being emitted a sharp aura that seemed capable of piercing through the heavens. So strong. Yu Chengfeng was shocked beyond words. But then, his eyes became even more vicious. He thought to himself, this is even better. This Chen Hao's aura is actually on par with Jian Wufei's. Even if the two of them don't die in one move, they will lose their ability to fight. Later, when I use my trump card and heavily injure Chen Shui, I will be able to do whatever I want. Is this his limit? Unlike Yu Chengfeng, Chen Shui sensed the aura that Chen Hao was emitting. Her beautiful face revealed a trace of seriousness. However, it was only seriousness. In the small-sized grotto heaven, her understanding of Chen Hao had reached a certain level. Take this. Jian Wufei's aura had reached its peak. She was like a high and mighty king as she slashed out with her sword. Boom, 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 boom. Giant rocks covered the sky like locusts as they attacked Chen Hao. Every single one of them contained the terrifying will of the heavens and earth. Their speed was many times faster than the speed of sound. But what was even more shocking was that Jian Wufei had become one with her sword. After borrowing the power of the heavens and earth to attack with the giant rocks, her aura suddenly disappeared. Even her body disappeared from Chen Hao's eyes as she hid among the giant rocks. This was the true killing move. Even Chen Shui, who had absolute confidence in Chen Hao, had a change of expression at this moment. She had never thought that Jian Wufei's ultimate move would contain such a shocking stealth attack. This was her area of expertise. However, even with her superior soul perception, she couldn't lock onto Jian Wufei's aura. This was definitely dangerous. Similarly, Chen Hao was also shocked. At this moment, Chen Hao felt an unprecedented threat of death. I can't sense it. River Mountain Sword Dao, River Mountain Sword Dao. It contains the concept of mountains and earth, transforming into mountains and earth, so that's how it is. In that instant, Chen Hao's shocking comprehension ability understood the true power of Jian Wufei's River Mountain Sword Dao. Transforming into mountains and earth, she was mountains and earth was her. Between the layers of giant rocks, her aura had completely merged with them. Every boulder was her, and she was every boulder. To put it bluntly, the attack of the giant rocks was just a cover for her true killing move. She was too fast and Chen Hao didn't have much time to think or comprehend. The only thing he could do was face her head-on. And Chen Hao knew that he had to be even faster. At this moment, Chen Hao's mind was more focused than ever. With a loud shout, his sword swept out. Another sword swept out. Another sword swept out. Shwa shwa shwa. 3 consecutive swords as fast as shooting stars. Every sword was a platinum heaven-splitting slash. Boom, 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 boom. The 3 swords seemed to come at the same time and contained a terrifying spatial vortex. The moment they collided with the giant rocks, there was a loud explosion that shook the heavens and earth. The giant rocks were directly turned to dust. Jian Wufei's figure suddenly appeared. Die! No one could describe how shocked Jian Wufei was at this moment. She originally thought that her sword, which surpassed her cultivation level, would definitely be able to kill Chen Hao. She didn't even need to use her one with the sword to attack. But she didn't think that Chen Hao would be able to instantly shatter her dancing mountains and earth spirit chi. In her estimation, with Chen Hao's strength, this was absolutely impossible. But Chen Hao did it. Consecutive killer moves. What kind of concept was this? At the very least, Jian Wufei had never seen or even heard of someone who was able to use such a move in succession. But Chen Hao instantly sent out 3 platinum heaven-splitting slashes, leaving her with nowhere to hide. Her mind, energy, and strength, all of her will, under extreme shock, made Jian Wufei more focused than ever. She, who was one with the sword, seemed to tear through the void and lock onto Chen Hao's forehead. She didn't believe that Chen Hao could use another killer move. Plus, even if Chen Hao could use another killer move, She was confident that she could use her strongest sword to kill Chen Hao. Closer, closer, Jian Wufei seemed to see the hope of victory. Chen Shui screamed. But at this moment, she couldn't help at all. Not to mention that she couldn't use her killer move in time. Even if she did, it would be useless. Yu Qingfeng was excited, but at the same time, he was terrified. What did Chen Hao's consecutive killer moves mean? Just what sort of concept was that when Jian Wufei concealed herself, she was able to erupt with peerless might? He, Yu Qingfeng, was the strongest of the three forces, the South Sea Islands inner sect. But at this moment he knew that whether it was Chen Hao or Jian Wufei, he couldn't win against them. Luckily, the two of them were on the verge of death. He was certain that Chen Hao would die and Jian Wufei wouldn't be any better. At that time, it would be time for him to kill Jian Wufei. At this moment of life and death, the pale-faced Chen Hao's expression was cold to the extreme. 3 consecutive platinum sky-splitting slashes was his limit. In reality, if it wasn't for his dual cultivation of martial arts and mental energy, allowing his mental energy to surpass others of the same level, and his soul power to surpass others, he wouldn't have been able to use his killer moves in succession. But even so, the price he had to pay was great. With his current strength, he could definitely use 10 platinum sky-splitting slashes. But just 3 of them cost him 60% of his true energy. But he couldn't even hurt Jian Wufei. And at this moment, he was facing Jian Wufei's true killer move. At this moment, Chen Hao could clearly tell that even if he combined the solitary sword technique and the space element into the platinum sky-splitting slash and used all his strength, he still wouldn't be able to defend against her strongest attack. What would the result be? Melt for me. The thick aura of death made Chen Hao go crazy. There was no reason to hide anymore. He couldn't hide anymore. Otherwise, he would be the one to die. As Chen Hao shouted, Chen Hao slashed out again. It was still the platinum sky-splitting slash. It still contained the space element. But the difference was boom, 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 boom. Along with Chen Hao's strike, the roar of a beast that resounded through the heavens and the earth suddenly gushed out from the 5-element sword. Flying dragon leaves the abyss. Qilin breaks the earth. Fierce tiger descends the mountain. Vermilion bird burns the heavens. Turtle snake overturns the sea. The inherited power of the 5 divine beasts was forcefully infused into the platinum sky-splitting slash by Chen Hao. Ever since he obtained the 5 divine beasts, he basically hid them. First, he didn't want to borrow their power. Second, he didn't have the time to spend on the 5 divine beasts during his intense cultivation journey. However, this mindset had changed when he was cultivating in the grotto heaven. In the past, he was biting off more than he could chew. He was fantasizing too much about the secrets of the Tao. He didn't realize that only the things in his hands belonged to him. Only by constantly comprehending and perfecting one's own Tao would one be able to step onto the strongest path. Chen Hao didn't know the consequences of forcefully fusing them. But he knew that if he didn't do so, he would die. Between the unknown and death, he chose the unknown. At this moment, Chen Hao felt as if all the essence, energy, and spirit in his body had been sucked out. His internal organs, meridians, and golden core had all suffered a severe backlash in an instant. However, Chen Hao gritted his teeth and completed this sword strike. The strongest slash of his life. Part 1. Chapter 287. The terrified Chen Shui felt as if her heart was in her throat. She circulated her energy to the maximum as she prepared to fight with her life on the line. She had always been calm and was rarely impulsive. But facing the possibility of Chen Hao dying under Jian Wufei's sword, she could no longer remain calm. But at this moment, Chen Shui, who thought that Chen Hao had reached his limit, didn't expect Chen Hao to once again display strength that exceeded her expectations. How is this possible? Yu Qingfeng was already a little dumbfounded. His face was twisted to the extreme as he stared at Chen Hao in a daze. His heart trembled as he couldn't take the repeated blows from Jian Wufei and Chen Hao. He also deeply understood that if he fought with Jian Wufei and Chen Hao in a life-and-death battle, he would be the one to lose. Jian Wufei was even more terrified than Chen Shui and Yu Qingfeng. When Chen Hao broke through his limit and unleashed his strongest attack, Swordswoman's cold eyes suddenly shrank. She had never felt fear before, but at this moment, she felt the threat of death from the depths of her heart. She couldn't tell what the outcome would be, but she knew that she couldn't win, and there was no way out. Clang. Rumble. The two swords clashed, causing the earth to crack. At this moment, even the heavens and earth darkened. Jian Wufei's body was like a kite with a broken string. She spat out a stream of blood as she flew backwards. On the other hand, Chen Hao, who was already standing on the ground, was directly struck by the terrifying recoil, creating a deep ravine on the ground. His entire body also spat out a mouthful of blood as he fell limply to the ground. Chen Hao! This? Chen Shui cried out loudly in terror, then she suddenly vanished on the spot and charged towards Chen Hao like a bolt of lightning. The geniuses, top geniuses, you are all top geniuses. But today, you will all die in my hands, a hiss. When Yu Qingfeng saw the results of the battle, he immediately woke up from his shock. He laughed wildly in excitement. As he spoke, he turned into a streak of light and shot towards Jian Wufei, who was still floating in the void. He would first kill the heavily injured Jian Wufei, then kill Chen Hao, who was protected by Chen Shui. His wishful thinking was absolutely good. But, just as Yu Qingfeng was about to catch up to Jian Wufei, a terrifying aura suddenly surged out of Jian Wufei's forehead. It was an aura that Jian Wufei didn't even have at her peak state. This aura was extremely strong. Not to mention a half-step nascent soul stage cultivator, even an primordial spirit stage cultivator wouldn't have this aura. At this moment, the aura Yu Qingfeng felt was not at all inferior to the aura of their sect master. In his fear, Yu Qingfeng almost fell from the sky. How would he dare to attack? It was also at this moment that Yu Qingfeng saw an illusory figure containing a terrifying will appear beside Jian Wufei. That illusory figure lightly waved his hand at Jian Wufei. In the next instant, the illusory figure transformed into a mysterious energy that enveloped Jian Wufei. After that, the illusory figure vanished into the void. Celestial Prime's will. Could it be the Celestial Prime's will? How is this possible? How did she get it? This time, Yu Qingfeng was really scared out of his wits. He was so scared that he almost peed his pants. No matter what, he did not expect Jian Wufei to have obtained the Celestial Prime's will. As a top genius of a 9th-rank sect in the South Sea, his knowledge was far beyond that of Chen Hao and Chen Shui. How many people in the entire boundless continent could obtain the Celestial Prime's will? In Yu Qingfeng's knowledge, only in the most powerful, chaotic, and competitive Middle Continent, there were less than 2 top geniuses who could obtain the Celestial Prime's will. This was the protection that the supreme existence of the boundless continent, the limitless celestial palace, gave to the geniuses with great potential. Those who were able to obtain the protection were all exceptional geniuses. Although Yu Qingfeng had the confidence to break through, the current him was not even worth a fart in front of these people. But Jian Wufei, who was only half a step away from the nascent soul stage, obtained it. I actually lost. Jian Wufei, who was surrounded by a mystical aura and extremely weak, spoke with an unwilling expression on her face within a mystical space. This space was a mini heavenly abode that the Celestial Primes will opened up. With the protection of this heavenly abode, Jian Wufei could naturally escape death. However, from now on, she would no longer have her strongest trump card. That was because everyone only had one chance. When she saw Chen Hao's true strength, she was fearless because of this trump card. But at that time, she never thought that she would need it. If she knew this would happen, she would rather give up on Chen Hao. It was just a training ground for the Golden Core and Nascent Soul Stage cultivators. How good could the items in the heavenly abode be? She wouldn't trade for anything precious, let alone primal crystal stones, heaven-level techniques, or upper-level spiritual weapons. This was something that could even save her life if she met an Essence Soul Stage cultivator. But now, it was wasted on Chen Hao, a cultivator at the peak of the Golden Core stage. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wufei's eyes shone with unwillingness and coldness. She didn't waste any more time and entered the state of recovery. Since I can't kill her now, I'll just kill Chen Hao. Yu Qingfeng, who was on the verge of pissing himself, was stunned for a few minutes under that terrifying aura. He only came back to his senses when all the immortal venerate's wills dissipated. He thought to himself viciously. But when he turned around, Chen Hao and Chen Shui were nowhere to be seen. They ran away? Yu Qingfeng was both shocked and furious. He spread out his senses but couldn't sense any trace of Chen Hao and Chen Shui's auras. After a month of hard work, he didn't even get anything. He even watched as the other 4 super geniuses of the South Sea Islands were killed. Adding on the fact that Chen Hao and Jian Wufei had hurt him, it was hard for his heart not to be twisted. Die, die, die. You all have to die. Chen Hao's talent, comprehension, and combat power are no less than Jian Wufei's. If he is allowed to grow, he will definitely be able to obtain the Celestial Prime's will. He must die. That girl is no worse than me. It's obviously impossible to subdue her. She must die too. Jian Wufei must die too. The Celestial Primes can only save her life once. She's gone. I've already offended them. If I don't kill them, they'll kill me one day. Yu Qingfeng had no choice but to crush his sect-disciple communication talisman. He sent out all the information about Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and Jian Wufei. He believed that the peak late-stage nascent soul realm and half-step incarnation realm experts in the sect who had entered Sky City would not ignore him after receiving his information. Because even though he was half-step nascent soul, his prestige in the sect was unparalleled. Because his potential was undoubtedly the strongest. The only difference now was the difference in cultivation level. After doing all this, Yu Qingfeng turned into a ray of light and flew towards the depths of Sky City. It was obviously impossible to chase after Chen Hao and Chen Shui. Once Chen Hao recovered a bit, it wouldn't be a problem of chasing after him, but how to escape. He was already scared out of his wits by Chen Hao and Jian Wufei. As for Jian Wufei, he knew that she couldn't be here with the Celestial Prime's will. Otherwise, she wouldn't be a life-saving talisman. In the void, every time they flashed, they would travel a few hundred feet. Chen Shui carried the heavily injured Chen Hao and pushed her speed to the limit. She had reached the peak of the early stage of the greater mastery of the space element, so her speed was extremely fast. Even a peak late-stage nascent soul or half-step incarnation realm expert might not be able to catch up to her. And this was the speed of carrying a person. Chen Hao's injuries were very serious. The injuries on his body weren't any less than when he entered the cultivation paradise. What was more serious was that Chen Hao had used up all his energy. Even his essence, energy, and soul seemed to have been sucked dry. He was extremely weak. It could be said that the battle between Chen Hao and Jian Wufei was a lose-lose situation. Both of them had almost lost their lives. With such heavy injuries, Chen Hao naturally couldn't be carried by Chen Shui. She could only hold him firmly in her arms. Moreover, while flying at such a high speed, she had to use her energy to protect Chen Hao. At the same time, she poured her true yuan into Chen Hao's almost dried-up dantian to help him refine the healing pills. Can't you close your eyes? In the beginning, Chen Shui, who was busy running away, put all her focus on how to get rid of Yu Qingfeng. After flying continuously for an hour, when she was sure that Yu Qingfeng couldn't catch up to her, Chen Shui suddenly realized that Chen Hao, who was in her arms, was staring at her. If he was staring, then so be it. Occasionally looking was nothing. But after looking a few times, Chen Shui discovered that Chen Hao's eyes were open the entire time. Chen Shui finally couldn't help but say, "Actually, you could have killed Yu Qingfeng. Why did you run?" Chen Hao didn't answer Chen Shui. Instead, he weakly said, feeling Chen Shui's warm and soft embrace, although Chen Hao was heavily injured, his heart was very satisfied. It wasn't that Chen Hao had any shameless thoughts. It was because this child lacked too much love and care in his previous life. Chen Shui desperately running away with him made him feel like he was being protected. What made him speechless was that this fellow actually enjoyed this rare warmth. Coupled with the faint fragrance of Chen Shui's virgin body, it was simply too easy to intoxicate him. I'm not absolutely sure. It would be bad if you were to be affected. Chen Shui avoided Chen Hao's gaze as she searched for a temporary shelter. I'm not that weak. The most serious thing is that I've exhausted my energy. Even if this injury was 10 times more serious, it wouldn't be a problem. If that kid doesn't die, Sky City will be much more dangerous for us. Just be careful and avoid it. It's nothing, Chen Shui said, but that Jian Wufei is really too terrifying. That will that appeared at the end, there's always a mountain higher than the other. Cough cough. Chen Hao opened his mouth and said. However, when he spoke, his eyes, which were lying on his back, were looking at the charming and gentle figure. This was definitely unintentional, but since he had already said it, he couldn't take it back. Fortunately, Chen Shui didn't have any reaction. Chen Hao hurriedly said, that was the will of a celestial sovereign. Let alone me, even a primordial soul realm expert wouldn't be able to kill her. Will of a celestial sovereign? What is that? Chen Shui asked in surprise. Chapter 288. The Immortal Sovereign's will is the protection of the limitless immortal palace. Only the true geniuses of the limitless immortal palace have it. Jian Wufei comprehended the Mountain River Sword Dao at the Golden Core stage and condensed the Sword Dao will. She is indeed extraordinary. It is said that the number of disciples under the nascent soul stage in the limitless continent can be counted on one hand. Only the monstrous geniuses of the middle continent have it. Of course, this is only on the surface. The ones that spread out are those who have used the immortal sovereign's will. No one would say such things. Just like Jian Wufei, if it wasn't exposed, who would know that she had it? Maybe there are people in the eastern continent who have it too. Chen Hao said slowly. When he mentioned the eastern continent, Xia Yuyu's figure appeared in Chen Hao's mind. How do you know so much? Chen Shui looked at Chen Hao in surprise. It's a secret. Chen Hao's blood-stained lips curled up slightly. He used the word secret to dodge Chen Shui's question. He couldn't help it. Itoda knew all this and he couldn't say it out loud. Chen Shui pouted unhappily and didn't ask further. More than 10 minutes later, Chen Shui found a small but absolutely hidden cave on a mountain peak. With his powerful soul perception, he confirmed that there was no danger before leading Chen Hao in. It had to be said that Chen Hao's recovery ability was obviously several times stronger than the last time he was seriously injured. In just 2 hours of flight, although he had Chen Shui's help, the two of them were still chatting. But even so, the huge injuries on Chen Hao's body had recovered by about 30%. Under the effect of the pure medicine, the true yuan in his dantian had also recovered by 10%. We are flying towards the outer area. There shouldn't be any danger here. Hurry up and heal your injuries. I will guard you. Chen Shui put Chen Hao down and said. Chen Hao nodded. He didn't stand on ceremony and entered a state of cultivation. Chen Shui sat cross-legged at the entrance of the cave. Although Chen Shui didn't enter the life and death battle, the pressure that Yu Chengfeng gave her and the battle between Chen Hao and Jian Wufei gave her a lot of benefits. Once she completely digested it, Chen Shui was sure that her battle strength would increase by a lot. A day later, Chen Shui was meditating when she suddenly felt a familiar fluctuation in the surrounding space. It was familiar because she had experienced it before. But what surprised Chen Shui was that this fluctuation was far more powerful than what she had experienced before. At this instant, Chen Shui clearly felt that the energy of heaven and earth that she could originally easily absorb had actually been forcefully pulled away from her body at this moment, as if it had been sucked into a vacuum, causing her to be unable to absorb the slightest bit of it. Sovereigns, Chen Shui opened her eyes in surprise and stared at Chen Hao, who was sitting cross-legged not far away. Clearly, Chen Hao's cultivation had advanced once again. Half-stage. What is the concept of half-stage? Specifically, any half-stage cultivator has the necessary conditions to enter the original realm. As long as they are willing, they can trigger the heavens' punishment. It's just that no one dares to trigger the heavens' punishment. From the golden elixir realm onwards, any breakthrough in the next realm requires one to undergo the heavens' punishment. The strength of the heavens' punishment varies from person to person. The stronger the person, the more terrifying the heavens' punishment. No cultivator dares to trigger the heavens' punishment recklessly. Especially for normal cultivators, the heavens' punishment is a nightmare to them. Some people will only risk their lives when their lifespan is nearing its end. Even super geniuses like Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, and Wu Ruochen don't dare to be careless. Of course, it's not that they are afraid that they can't overcome it. It's that they want to improve themselves more. The stronger the heavens' punishment is, the greater the danger, but the greater the rewards. This is because the heavens' punishment is a refinement of the body, soul, and mind. If one can successfully overcome it, there will be great benefits. Therefore, these super geniuses will only trigger the heavens' punishment when they can no longer improve themselves and when their minds are perfect and they have no inner demons. Though this slows down their cultivation speed, once they enter a higher realm, they will have more potential and more flexibility. Half-stage original realm. After a full 10 minutes, Chen Hao let out a long breath and slowly opened his eyes. His handsome face shone with a trace of excitement. Chen Hao could clearly feel that the golden elixir in his dantian was beating slightly. Like a baby's heart, it produced a trace of life. This was the sign of forming the original realm. As long as he triggers the heavens' punishment, he will successfully overcome it. He will break through to the original realm. The density of my Zhenyuan has increased by 40%. I didn't think that a half-step original realm cultivator would be so powerful. Chen Hao saw Chen Shui staring at him and smiled. He was certain that if he were to face Jian Wufei's last attack, Chen Hao would be able to easily take it. This is the absolute power brought by the increase in cultivation level. 40%? Are you sure? Chen Shui was shocked. Is it a lot? It seems a bit much. Chen Hao smiled proudly. Ito Ta was already roaring in Chen Hao's mind. What do you mean a bit much? When I reached the half-step nascent soul stage, it only increased by 25%. That was already very shocking. Half-step nascent soul realm was only at the golden core realm. But you increased it by 40%. If you enter the original realm, I really don't know how much you can improve. Chen Shui said speechlessly. You will know when the time comes. Speaking of which, I'm curious. Why are you in such a hurry to increase your cultivation level? With your talent, if you weren't in a hurry to increase your cultivation level, your early original realm strength wouldn't be so low. Secret. What caused Chen Hao to be speechless was that Chen Shui straightforwardly gave him a taste of his own medicine and shut Chen Hao's mouth. Should we continue or? Chen Shui calmed herself down and changed the topic. Let's wait a few more days. This battle allowed me to comprehend a lot of things, and I have just increased my cultivation level, so I need to digest it. Chen Hao said. If it was before entering the grotto heaven, he would definitely choose to go deeper. But now, Chen Hao's mentality has changed. Even in this once-in-a-century sky city, he can face it calmly. It has to be said that since stepping into the cultivation world, Chen Hao has been rushing forward, almost without any pause. It seems that the improvement is amazing, but now, Chen Hao understands that if this situation continues, it will not be a good thing. Tension and relaxation, the way of civil and martial arts. Such a simple truth is often the easiest to ignore. The so-called relaxation is not to abandon everything, but to stop and digest. Only in this way can you improve yourself from a deeper level, understand yourself, and surpass yourself. I also need a few days to digest it. I will go out for a while and be back in a while. Chen Shui said. You want to take a bath and change your clothes, right? Chen Hao naturally knew what Chen Shui was going to do. He smiled slightly and asked without hesitation. Why do you ask if you know? What I mean is, you don't have to go out. I will give you a surprise later. Chen Hao smiled slightly and said mysteriously. He took out the 5-element sword and swept his gaze across the cave. Then he started to attack continuously. Chi. With Chen Hao's sword light, the hard rocks flew out of the cave like tofu. After a while, the cave that was originally only 10 feet in radius became 100 feet in radius. Moreover, at the bottom, there were 2 independent small caves. If they were standing alone, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, Chen Hao had obviously turned these 2 small caves into baths that were 10 feet wide and 3 feet deep. What are you doing? Chen Shui was curious about what surprise Chen Hao would give her, but after seeing Chen Hao make this space, she asked puzzledly. Look carefully. Voila, following Chen Hao's voice, something that shocked Chen Shui happened. The clear, sparkling water that contained dense and pure spiritual qi of heaven and earth actually gushed out from Chen Hao's body. In an instant, one of the baths was filled to the brim. Spiritual spring. You. How can you take it out? In almost an instant, Chen Shui recognized what Chen Hao released. Secret. I also didn't expect to take it out, but the moment we came out, I took it out. Alright, this bathing pool is yours. It's enough for you to absorb for a few days. If it's not enough, just look for me. Chen Shui looked at Chen Hao in a daze as he walked out of the small cave. How is this possible? How did he do it? This time, Chen Shui was really stunned by the word secret from Chen Hao. One had to know that when she was cultivating in the grotto heaven, she had tried it. Once the spiritual spring was absorbed into the storage space, the spiritual qi in it would disappear completely, and there would be no difference between it and ordinary water. Moreover, she clearly remembered that Chen Hao had also tried it before, and it also didn't work. But how did he get it out now? Other than the fact that it didn't contain the profound space attribute, it was exactly the same as the spiritual spring in the grotto heaven. How many secrets does he have? Chen Shui originally thought that she had enough secrets, but compared to Chen Hao, it seemed to be far from enough. Chen Shui was both depressed and happy. After blocking the hole, she took off her blue dress that was stained with Chen Hao's blood and jumped into the spirit spring. Although her true essence had long since cleaned up the stains on her body, her many years of habit still made Chen Shui gently scrub every inch of her smooth and sparkling skin. After taking off her veil, her skin was as white as snow, and she was devastatingly beautiful. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and no one knew what she was thinking. In short, after more than 10 minutes, she threw away the distracting thoughts in her mind and entered into a state of cultivation. After Chen Hao pretended to be calm and entered another small cave, his face was filled with intense joy. Even he didn't expect that the mysterious existence in his mind would bring him such a pleasant surprise. Although he couldn't take away all the spiritual spring in the grotto heaven, if he released all of it, it would be enough to form a small lake with a diameter of 200 feet and a depth of 100 feet. How high was the value of this? Third update to fill in the gaps. There is no update tonight, everyone don't wait. I finished early today, the result of staying up late last night, so that I can play with my daughter tonight. I haven't played with her since I came back from Nanjing. Tomorrow, I will continue to work hard in Dark Mountain. Chapter 289. Chen Hao's mind was immersed in the Heaven and Earth Ring. The Heaven and Earth Ring was originally a low-grade spiritual weapon, but when combined with the 5 spiritual swords, it surpassed high-grade spiritual weapons and was close to supreme-grade spiritual weapons. Unlike ordinary spiritual weapons, it also had a storage space, and as Chen Hao's realm increased, the size of the storage space gradually increased. Until now, Chen Hao had not completely merged with the Heaven and Earth Ring, but he was not far away. What a pity, what a pity! If the space of the Heaven and Earth Ring was big enough, it might be able to store all the spiritual spring in the grotto heaven. Chen Hao had never felt that the space of the Heaven and Earth Ring was small, but now it was almost filled with spring water. He was sure that when he walked out of the grotto heaven, the mysterious existence had helped him fill it up. However, at this moment he had stepped into the half-step nascent soul stage, so there was a little more space. 1 square foot contains the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, which is equivalent to a low-grade primordial crystal stone. My spiritual spring is 3 million cubic feet, which is equivalent to 3 million low-grade primordial crystal stones, which is 30,000 high-grade primordial crystal stones, and 3,000 supreme-grade primordial crystal stones. Cultivating the grotto heaven only gives me 100 supreme-grade primordial crystal stones. Chen Hao's mind was immersed in the Heaven and Earth Ring, and he calculated in his heart. Master, the value of the spiritual spring can't be calculated like that. Although the spiritual spring has lost the space attribute, it still contains an ancient aura, and the energy in it is also extremely pure. If you sell it to an alchemist or a weapon refiner, the price will be several times higher. Moreover, Master, you must minor in alchemy and weapon refinement, and it will be better for you to use it. Ito-tai said. Of course, I will keep good things for my own use. Chen Hao replied. Almost all cultivators would be involved in alchemy and weapon refinement. It was just a major and a minor. Weapon refinement was especially important. After reaching the primordial soul stage, almost everyone had to learn it. After all, it was very difficult to obtain a powerful spiritual weapon, and to let one's weapon exert the greatest power, one could only continuously modify it. Moreover, only one knew what one needed the most. A weapon refiner could refine a powerful spiritual weapon, but it was not necessarily the most suitable for one's own spiritual weapon. For true experts, their natal magic treasures were obtained through continuous refinement and refinement. His mind came out of the mysterious yellow ring. Chen Hao was actually reluctant to pour the spirit spring into the bath. Anyway, he had just been promoted to the half-step nascent soul stage and was already in the peak state. Therefore, he directly took off his blood-stained and torn clothes, and with a surge of his true essence, he removed the stains on his body. After changing into an ordinary robe, he went to the big hole and activated his energy to lay down layers of enchantments within a radius of 1,000 feet. After making sure that he would not disturb Chen Hao took out the 5-element sword, integrated his mind into it, and stabbed with the sword. After the battle with Jian Wufei, Chen Hao no longer had any trump cards to speak of. Now, what he needed to do was to truly integrate the inheritance of the 5 divine beasts into the Platinum Sky-Piercing Slash and completely turn the Platinum Sky-Piercing Slash into a true combo ultimate move. As long as he could achieve these 2 points, his combat strength would increase again. At the same time, he wanted to see if he could make a breakthrough in his sword Dao. Chen Hao had already awakened his sword intent, and his sword intent had already reached the first level of the sword Dao. Moreover, in the battle with Jian Wufei, facing the terrifying sword intent, Chen Hao could clearly feel that his sword intent was showing signs of a breakthrough. Once it reached the second level of the sword Dao, even if he did not comprehend the sword intent, his combat strength would increase by a lot. As for the sword intent, Chen Hao did not ask for it. This was because he did not cultivate the corresponding sword techniques, and his sword intent was not high enough, so it would be difficult for him to form the sword intent. Phew! Jian Wufei let out a long sigh and slowly opened her eyes in the small hole that seemed to be floating in the void. As expected of a celestial sovereign's intent. Just a strand of divine will can form such a powerful small hole. If it was a real person, how strong would it be? In just 2 days, without any healing elixirs, I have not only recovered to my peak state, but my sword intent has also reached the middle stage of the greater success stage. If I use the 5th level of the Mountain River sword technique now, I will definitely not suffer any backlash. Jian Wufei's eyes shone brightly, and her face was filled with confidence as she thought to herself. Chen Hao, don't let me find you. Otherwise, I will cut you into 1,000 pieces and destroy your body and soul. And that woman, they will all die. That's for I can only endure for now. Jian Wufei said coldly, and she already had a plan in mind. Sensing that the small hole was about to shatter, Jian Wufei slowly stood up, and the unwillingness in her heart grew. Her hatred for Chen Hao grew even stronger. After stepping out of the small hole, Jian Wufei appeared in Sky City again. The surrounding heaven and earth spiritual qi was extremely dense, and it was obvious that it was of a higher level than where she and Chen Hao were originally. Without any hesitation, Jian Wufei sent the message and crushed the sect's communication talisman. She had done the same thing as Yu Qingfeng. However, she didn't try to get the sect's disciples to kill Yu Qingfeng. This was because Jian Wufei knew that Yu Qingfeng was a super genius from the Coiling Dragon Valley, a rank 9 sect in the South Sea Islands. The Coiling Dragon Valley was a sect that was much stronger than the Sky River sect, and they had a unique position in the South Sea Islands. They definitely had more peak late nascent soul and half-step incarnation realm experts than the Sky River sect that Jian Wufei was in. Even if she said it, the sect's disciples wouldn't dare to provoke him. There was no need to waste energy. Unless she met Yu Chengfeng, who was alone, she could only let him go for now. 10 days later. Chengfeng, there is still no news. We can't delay any longer. There are less than 2 months left in Sky City, and in 20 days, the core of the ancient city will open. We have to go, maybe we can meet them there. Deep in Sky City, on a mountain peak, a half-step incarnation realm youth with a powerful aura said calmly. This youth's face was like jade, and he wore a white robe that was spotless. Beside him stood 2 extremely beautiful women, one on his left and one on his right, and it was obvious that they had a close relationship. If the people of the South Sea Islands saw him, they would know who he was. This youth was the strongest sect in the South Sea Islands, the leader of the core disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley, Yi Shanshui. His combat strength was unfathomable, and he had the bloodline of the ancient divine dragon. He was also the leader of the Coiling Dragon Valley disciples, and he was ranked first in the test. Even Yu Chengfeng didn't dare to say that he had absolute confidence in surpassing this person. Fortunately, Yi Shanshui was determined to travel the world with his beauty. Moreover, he was more than 10 years older than Yu Chengfeng, so there was no competitive relationship between them. Both of them were extremely lustful, and they were both top geniuses, so they had a good relationship. All right, that's all we can do for now, Yu Chengfeng said with a gloomy face. Under Yi Shanshui's orders, the disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley who had entered the Sky City and the sects of Han Ji and the other geniuses had been searching for 10 days, but they had yet to find any news about Chen Hao, Chen Shui, or Jian Wufei. Are you going to follow us or do you want to go on your own? Yi Shanshui asked. I'll follow you, Yu Chengfeng said hesitantly. This isn't like you. Yu Chengfeng's expression was a bit ugly. Yu Chengfeng's expression was a bit ugly as he said, you didn't see how strong Chen Hao and Jian Wufei were. One can use his ultimate moves in succession and has the inheritances of the 5 mythological beasts. The other's sword intent has reached large success and she has mastered the 5th level of the Mountain River Sword Dao. I'm not their match right now unless I can awaken my bloodline to the 2nd level, but damn it. All right, your bloodline is much stronger than mine, so it's naturally hard for you to awaken it. Follow me, and if we meet them, I'll kill them for you. If you can't increase your strength, then you'll attract divine punishment when you leave Sky City. Yes. Yu Chengfeng nodded his head and replied. Hiss hiss hiss. Boom boom boom. 3 incomparably sharp sword lights shot out almost at the same time. In an instant, a mountain peak with a diameter of 300 feet was directly cut into 3 sections and collapsed with a loud bang. The incomparably sharp sword intent lasted for a few minutes before it slowly dissipated. 3 consecutive sword attacks? I can already easily do it. My sword intent has also broken through to the 2nd level of the Sword Dao, but the 5 divine beasts are still unable to merge naturally. It looks like it won't be done in a short period of time. Only by merging with the 5 divine beasts will it be possible. But even so, my battle strength has increased by quite a bit. Even if I meet a late nascent soul stage super genius, I have a 70% chance of winning. Peak late nascent soul stage and half incarnation stage, with the space element and the mental cultivation method to merge with everything in the world, I should have no problem staying alive. Chen Hao slowly put away his sword as he judged. Is it done? At this moment, Chen Shui, who was standing near Chen Hao, asked. Dressed in a blue dress, she stood tall and slender. At this moment, her aura had clearly improved. It's about time. If you meet Yu Chengfeng again, what are your chances of winning? Chen Hao asked as he sensed Chen Shui's aura. 100%. The premise is that he hasn't become stronger, Chen Shui said confidently. After nearly 10 days of digestion and absorption, Chen Shui's improvement was no less than Chen Hao's. Not only did she break through from the peak of the early nascent soul stage to the middle nascent soul stage, but her chaos sword technique had also improved and she had mastered the 6th level of the Tempest Thunder Tribulation. Moreover, she had also comprehended some of the solitary sword technique that Chen Hao had taught her. It had to be said that although the cultivation environment in Sky City had a lot to do with the two's monstrous speed of improvement, it was still much faster for other super geniuses. Not bad. Let's go then. Let's go straight to the depths. The ancient city area is about to open. With our strength, as long as we hide, we will have no problem staying alive. Qin Shui said. This. 5 days later, the two of them were meditating to recover and flying. Without stopping to rest, they advanced into the depths of Sky City. Along the way, they encountered many cultivators and flying beasts, but the two of them quietly avoided them. Firstly, it was not challenging. Secondly, there was not much time left before the core of the ancient city area opened, and they did not have time to waste. Thirdly, there were too many people who wanted to trouble them. Once they were exposed, they might attract countless experts. It could not be helped. Just the disciples of the Eastern continent alone would want to trample on Chen Hao, or even kill him. Moreover, Chen Hao had killed several top geniuses from the Southern Sea Islands and the Western continent. First update. Chapter 290. As Chen Hao and Qin Shui continued to go deeper, they encountered more and more cultivators. They saw countless small-scale battles, and most of them were people from different continents. However, these had nothing to do with the two of them. Both of them blended into everything in the world and drifted past like two gusts of wind. When the two of them were about to find a place to recover, Qin Shui suddenly seemed to have noticed something. What did you notice? Qin Hao asked. In these few days, Chen Hao was completely sure that Qin Shui, who had stepped into the intermediate nascent soul stage, was more than 30% stronger than him in terms of perception ability. Chen Hao's current perception ability limit of 500 miles was already very heaven-defying. Even compared to a super genius at the half-step incarnation stage, it was still slightly stronger. However, Qin Shui could easily sense the distance within a radius of 800 miles. 500 miles and 800 miles seem to be only 300 miles apart, but if one were to draw a circle with oneself as the center, Qin Shui's perception area was more than twice of Chen Hao's. It seems like Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan from the Ling Tian sect are fighting with someone. I can't sense it clearly. They're about 800 miles to our left, and they're rapidly approaching us. They seem to be closely followed by 4 auras. Qin Shui said. Although Qin Shui did not associate with Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan, the two of them seemed to have a good relationship with Chen Hao. Moreover, Qin Shui was familiar with their auras. In Qin Shui's mind, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan were people who helped Chen Hao greatly. Since she sensed it, she said it out loud. Let's go and take a look. Duan Yufei is not bad. As expected, just as Qin Shui expected, Chen Hao said without even thinking. Whoosh whoosh. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan both had moderate wounds on their bodies. It was obvious that they had experienced a dangerous battle. At this moment, the two of them were flying at full speed. Less than 10 miles behind them, there were 4 cultivators from the Southern Sea Islands in hot pursuit. Moreover, the distance was getting closer and closer. It was obvious that they were faster than the two of them. These 4 people were the same as Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan. They were all at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. Let's see where you can run to. The leading youth of the 4 actually condensed a pair of solid wings with his pure and vigorous true essence, causing his speed to suddenly soar. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan frowned when they sensed the other party's speed. After the two entered Sky City, they were the first to meet and train together. With their battle prowess, they basically wouldn't encounter any danger in the periphery. However, when the core area of the ancient city was about to open, they rushed to meet up with the disciples of the sect. They did not expect to find a 3,000-year-old immortal fruit tree on their way there. The immortal fruit spirit tree bloomed and bore fruit once every 100 years, bearing 1 fruit each time. Although it was not a spirit fruit that could increase one's cultivation base, its value was definitely higher than that of countless top-grade spirit herbs. This was because the immortal fruit was an extremely rare spiritual fruit that could increase one's lifespan. In the eyes of young geniuses like Chen Hao, increasing one's lifespan might not be a big deal. However, for some cultivators who had reached a bottleneck in their cultivation and were nearing the end of their lifespan, it could save their lives. Even though one immortal fruit could only increase one's lifespan by 3 years, once a cultivator broke through to the next realm, their lifespan would be extended. How high was its value? In the cultivation world, any spirit herb that could increase one's lifespan was basically priceless. Nobody would sell it. Occasionally, it would be auctioned for a sky-high price. It was impossible to estimate the exact price. However, now, not only was the immortal fruit spirit tree snatched away, but their lives were also in great danger. Although the two of them had already sent a message to the core disciples of the sect, distant water could not quench their present thirst. Seeing that there was no way to escape, the two of them knew that the only thing they could do was to risk their lives and pray that the sect's elites happened to be nearby. Swoosh swoosh. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan held hands tightly and looked at each other before they landed on a mountain peak. Each of them swallowed a few spirit pills and raised their aura to the limit. Ha! What a waste of my energy. You should have done this long ago. Don't expect anyone to come and save you. It'll take at least a few days to reach the core area of the ancient city. No matter how fast your sect's elites are, it'll take at least 2 to 3 days, right? Moreover, they're willing to give up their training in the core area of the ancient city to save you? Pa. After seeing that the two of them were no longer running away, the young man in the lead put away his true origin wings and said confidently, "Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh." After a while, the other 3 people also landed on the mountain peak. The 4 of them split into 4 directions and surrounded Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan as if they were prey. "You've already gotten the spirit tree. Why do you have to kill all of us?" Duan Yufei said coldly, "If you want to kill us, at least 2 of you will have to die with us." Die with us? Pa, are you kidding me? Do you think the 4 of us will fight you to the death? I'll torture you to death no matter what. We have all the time in the world. Since we've gotten the spirit tree, there's no need for us to go to the dangerous core area anymore. Isn't it still cultivation there? Pa, the strongest young man said disdainfully when he heard Duan Yufei's words. "Brotherly, this woman is not bad. Although she's not a peerless beauty, she's still a rare beauty. You have to take it easy for me. Don't be too ruthless. Let me have some fun with her." "Fuck, I want to have fun with her too." Another young man said. "Are you kidding me? So you're all into this too? Motherfucker, I didn't expect the 3 of you to be so famous in our archipelago. Are women really that fun? Ha! Brotherly, we naturally wouldn't dare to mess around in our southern sea archipelago. But what are the disciples of the eastern continent afraid of? Women aren't just fun to play with. They have all kinds of fun. Only by experiencing it for yourself can you understand a thing or two. Of course, Brotherly is still a virgin. The 3 of us can have some fun with this chick. It won't be too late for Brotherly to try when we meet a beautiful virgin. Not only is the taste wonderful, it's also good for cultivation. Yin and yang blend, ha! Bastard! Duan Yufei was so angry that his hair stood on end. He clenched his teeth so hard that blood came out. His anger was like a volcanic eruption. Boom! His true origin, which contained monstrous anger, exploded. Duan Yufei was like a mad beast and attacked directly. Yufei. Xia Lanlan's face was pale. Death wasn't scary. With the person she loved by her side, she would live and die with him. What was there to fear? However, what Xia Lanlan didn't expect was that the 4 of them were actually such scumbags. Seeing Duan Yufei attack, Xia Lanlan, who originally wanted to self-detonate to avoid being humiliated, hesitated slightly and didn't do so. She fought first. Even if she died, she had to make the other party suffer a certain amount of damage. It wouldn't be too late to self-detonate at the last moment. Seeing the 2 of them angry, a trace of pride flashed in the depths of the 4 guys' eyes. This was exactly what they wanted. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan's realm and strength were on par with them. If they really wanted to kill them, they would have to face the 2's life and death counterattack. At that time, the 2 of them might really drag 1 or 2 of them down with them. But the 2 of them who had lost their minds were much simpler. Fight with them and consume their true origin. Be careful of that woman, she might drag us down with her to self-detonate. Ha! The leading youth transmitted his voice to the other 3. These 4 are quite sinister. In the void, Chen Hao and Qin Shui were like two cool breezes as they stared at Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan, who had already fallen into a great battle below them. Chen Shui transmitted her voice to Chen Hao. A distance of several hundred miles was a matter of minutes for the two of them at their maximum speed. When Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan landed on the mountain peak, the two of them had already arrived. It was just that they weren't in a hurry to attack. It's not that the four of them are sinister, it's that Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan are too inexperienced. It's the same for you, Chen Hao said bluntly. How am I the same? No matter what kind of battle, you can't give up until the last moment. Now, it's obvious that they already have the determination to die. This kind of situation can indeed increase their battle strength, but it's easier for them to fall into a real death trap. Last time, in the Blackwind Ancient Cave, you were the same, just slightly better than them. The more dangerous it is, the calmer you have to be. It's really unnecessary for them to lose their minds because of a few words from the other party. Otherwise, with their strength, even if they die, they can drag the two of you down with them. Chen Shui pursed her lips but didn't say anything. It's time to attack. You don't have to show yourself. Wait for me for a moment. A few minutes later, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan were already in a life-and-death situation. Chen Hao knew that he couldn't drag it on any longer. Otherwise, if Xia Lanlan self-destructed, he wouldn't be able to save her. Psst. Chen Hao's aura appeared above Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan out of thin air. Before anyone could react, he casually swung his sword 4 times. Chen Hao didn't use the platinum sky-splitting slash. He only used the flaw of the solitary sword technique to attack, raising his strength to 80% and containing the sword essence of the second heaven. Even so, the incomparably sharp sword intent instantly pressed down from all directions. For screams, accompanied by the sound of flesh being pierced, suddenly rang out. Just a moment ago, the 4 people who were in sight of victory all widened their eyes and stared at Chen Hao, who was standing in the void. However, the blood spurting out from between their eyebrows made them lose consciousness instantly. They didn't even taste the pain of death. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan, who weren't affected by Chen Hao's sword essence, also looked at the void with shock at this moment. Brother Duan, Miss Xia, I don't need your reward this time. I'll take their things. Chen Hao smiled and grabbed at the 4 corpses in the void. Immediately, their weapons and storage rings floated to Chen Hao. Be careful. Goodbye. While Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan were still in shock, Chen Hao's figure turned into a flowing light and quickly left their sight. After a long time, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan woke up from their shocked state. They felt like they were dreaming after surviving a disaster. No matter what, they didn't expect that such a shocking reversal would happen when they were on the verge of death. Is this true? Xia Lanlan reached out to pinch Duan Yufei's face and said in disbelief. Chen Hao had only appeared for a few seconds, but the 4 experts who had forced them into a desperate situation had died just like that. We owe Brother Chen 2 lives again, Duan Yufei murmured, holding Xia Lanlan's hand, his eyes full of gratitude and joy after surviving a disaster. In his heart, he was even more shocked by Chen Hao's strength. It's 2 chapters today. I'll still write at night, but it'll be too late. In case everyone has to wait, I'll leave it to tomorrow. It'll be 4 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 291. In the blink of an eye, he killed 4 peak early-stage nascent soul super-geniuses with a casual wave of his sword. What kind of concept was that? If Chen Hao was at the half-step incarnation realm, it would be fine. But he was only at the golden core realm. When they first met, although Chen Hao's battle strength was astonishing, Duan Yufei was still confident that he could defeat Chen Hao. During this period of time, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan had both stepped into the nascent soul realm and reached the peak of early-stage nascent soul realm. Their battle strength had increased several times, and their speed of improvement was enough to be proud of. But when they saw Chen Hao's attack just now, they knew what a monster was. At this moment, whether it was Duan Yufei or Xia Lanlan, they were shocked beyond words. He really deserves Yu Yu. Xia Lanlan murmured. Only Yu Yu deserves him, right? Duan Yufei thought to himself. Although it was just a reversal of the order, the meaning was completely different from what Xia Lanlan had said. Obviously, in Duan Yufei's heart, Chen Hao was stronger and more worthy of respect. Xia Yu had a unique cultivation environment, but what about Chen Hao? He was just an ordinary youth from the secular world who had stepped into the cultivation world step by step through his own efforts, and he had only entered a third-grade sect. Even if he had the full support of the star-picking sect, he couldn't be compared to Xia Yu. But in just a few months, his growth could only be described as monstrous. Although the two of them had suffered a lot of injuries, they weren't fatal. After swallowing healing elixirs, it only took them half a day to recover 80% of their battle strength. The two of them restrained their auras and flew to the core of the ancient city at their fastest speed. There wasn't much time left, so they had to speed up. What kind of spirit tree is this? Chen Hao and Qin Shui didn't fly for too long before they found a hidden cave and entered it. In Sky City, where danger could appear at any time, the two of them had to be cautious. Once their true essence and physical strength were exhausted to 40%, they would stop rushing. Otherwise, once they encountered danger, their battle strength would be greatly affected. After the two of them entered the cave, Chen Hao rummaged through the four people's storage rings. In the storage ring of the young man who led the group, he took out the spirit tree that they had mentioned during their conversation. When Chen Hao saw the spirit tree, he sensed the spirit tree's aura and asked in surprise, "Immortal fruit spirit tree?" When Chen Hao's eyes widened in surprise, Ito's voice also sounded in Chen Hao's mind. "Yes, it's the immortal fruit tree." After a while, Chen Shui said with great certainty. Chen Shui saw extremely detailed records of heaven and earth spiritual objects in the sect, which almost included all the spiritual medicines in the world. It was 100 times richer than what Chen Hao had seen in the sect's information. What's the use? It seems like the heaven and earth spirit chi here isn't very dense. Chen Hao asked as he stared at the immortal fruit tree, which was about 30 meters tall. When Qin Shui explained the magical use and value of the immortal fruit tree, Chen Hao was a little disappointed. However, it soon turned into excitement. It was useless to him, but its value was high. Quickly put it away. If you can, put it near the spirit spring. With the nourishment of the spirit spring, it will grow faster. Yes, after it blossoms and bears fruit, I'll give you the first fruit, Chen Hao said. Although Qin Shui did not contribute, the two of them had gone through the trial together. Therefore, they had to share what was needed. As he spoke, he put the immortal fruit tree into the mysterious yellow ring and placed it at the edge of the spirit spring. I don't need anything that can increase my lifespan, Qin Shui said. If you sell it, you'll get a lot of primal crystal stones. I don't lack them. You can keep them for yourself. Sister Fu, you don't have to be polite with me. I won't be polite, Chen Hao said with a smile. I'm not rich. Sister, I'll accept it. As long as it's for my cultivation, my sect, my mother will provide it to me, Qin Shui said. She almost said the word, sect. Fortunately, she stopped in time. Although Qin Shui was certain that Chen Hao would not discover her secret, it was better to be cautious. Moreover, she had told Chen Hao that she was a rogue cultivator. That's good. Quickly recover. Oh, right, if you have any information on spirit herbs, ores, and so on, give me a copy. Otherwise, I won't know if I come across any treasures in the future, Chen Hao said. The information on the star-picking sect is a little shabby. I didn't bring it with me. I'll give it to you when we get out. Okay. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. There was only 1 day left before the core ancient city area would open. At this moment, there were 1,000 people at the entrance of the core ancient city area. They were divided into 3 small areas and gathered within a 100-mile radius. There was a clear mark between this 100-mile radius and the surrounding space. It was as though a faint film of light was shrouded in it that shot up to the sky. It could be seen from tens of thousands of miles away. Obviously, this 100-mile radius was the only entrance to the core ancient city area after it opened. As time passed, People from the three forces were still arriving one after another. However, at this speed, there would definitely be less than 1,500 people by the time it opened. It should be known that a total of 3,000 people had stepped into Sky City. Where did the remaining half go? Obviously, there were only two results. They were either dead or too scared to come. Everyone knew that Sky City only had 3 months of training time. The first month was to test the results and strength of the disciples with similar combat strength and teleport them to the same area. In the second month, the entire Sky City, except for the core of the ancient city, would disappear. In the third month, the core of the ancient city would open, and it was also the most important month for Sky City. The core ancient city area was actually a huge space with a radius of 100,000 miles. It was also the real holy land for cultivation in Sky City. Not only was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth extremely rich, the entire space was filled with the mysterious aura of the heavenly Tao. It was very useful for cultivators to break through their own heavenly Tao. Moreover, in the huge space with a radius of 100,000 miles, there were some ancient palaces floating in the void. Whether one could enter it or not depended on one's opportunity, luck, and strength. Those with weak strength basically did not dare to try to enter the palaces. At most, they would choose a corner and secretly cultivate. Even so, they might face a fatal disaster. This was the battle of providence between the eastern and western continents and the southern sea archipelago. Who would be soft-hearted? Especially after killing people, they could obtain wealth. Many people wanted to do this. The area where the eastern mainland disciples were at was beyond the expectations of the southern sea archipelago and the western mainland disciples. This time, there were actually more than 350 people, which was dozens more than the western mainland. The southern sea archipelago had the most people with more than 400 people. In such a situation, nobody dared to act recklessly. Otherwise, both sides would suffer heavy casualties. Moreover, the ancient city area was about to open. Senior brother Zhao, don't tell me those fellows from the southern sea archipelago are guarding Lan Lan and junior brother Duan? At this moment, among the close to 20 Ling Tian sect disciples, a disciple at the peak of the mastery nascent soul stage asked the person beside him through voice transmission as he stared at the southern sea archipelago powerhouses who were wandering outside the light screen. This disciple was the Ling Tian sect's core disciple, Xia Xiaodao. He was also the direct descendant of the sect leader, Xia Lingfeng. He was Xia Lanlan and Xia Yu's cousin. I don't think so. The 4 people who were chasing after junior sister Lanlan and junior brother Duan were killed by Chen Hao in an instant. Although junior brother Duan didn't say what treasure it was, since the 4 of them obtained the treasure and were confident of winning, it's impossible for them to tell the sect, said the disciple called senior brother Zhao. This person was the leader of the Ling Tian sect this time, Zhao Yuanqing. He was also second only to Xia Yuyu among the core disciples. The aura emitted from his body was obviously that he had advanced to the half-step incarnation stage. Although he was not as powerful as Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, and Wu Ruochen, his combat strength was definitely in the top 10 among all the eastern mainland disciples. After he received Xia Lanlan and Duan Yufei's message, he went to their location without hesitation. However, he was too far away and could not make it in time. Fortunately, it did not take long before he received news from the 2 of them again. They said that the danger had been resolved and that they were saved by Chen Hao. Only then did he return the way he came with doubts. He was confused because he could not figure out how Chen Hao, who was only at the golden core stage before entering the sky, could save Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan who were at the early nascent soul stage. It's good that he's not. Yi Shanshui is the #1 core disciple in the southern sea archipelago. His combat strength is unfathomable. If we're targeted by him, we'll be in trouble. Xia Xiaodao said, Lanlan and junior brother Duan should be here soon. Fuck, don't tell me they don't dare to come? Yu Qingfeng, who was wandering at the edge and carefully sensing every person who came over, said fiercely when he saw that the ancient city was about to open. Until now, Qin Hao and Qin Shui had yet to appear. Jian Wufei did appear, But unfortunately, even with Yi Shanshui around, he could not do anything to Jian Wufei for now. This was something he did not expect. Jian Wufei's sect, the Tianhe sect, was one of the rank 9 sects in the Western continent, but it was not the strongest sect. However, when Jian Wufei arrived, she was welcomed by the strongest cultivators of the rank 9 sects in the Western continent, including the strongest sect, the Sacred Light sect. What did this mean? If Jian Wufei wanted to fight, it would mean that the Western continent and the Southern Sea Islands were at war. This time, the Eastern continent, which seemed to be on the rise, would definitely take advantage of the situation. Therefore, even Yi Shanshui did not dare to make a move at this time. He could only place all his hopes on Chen Hao and Chen Shui. Yu Qingfeng knew that Chen Hao was only a disciple of a rank 3 sect. During this time, even though he did not find Chen Hao and Chen Shui, he had killed dozens of Eastern continent disciples. From their mouths, he knew that Chen Hao was indeed a disciple of a rank 3 sect, and Chen Shui was just a rogue cultivator. With Yi Shanshui's status, as long as he said that he only wanted to deal with Chen Hao and Chen Shui, the people of the Eastern continent would not stand up for him. After all, Chen Hao had killed the top geniuses of the 4 rank 9 sects in the Southern Sea Islands. Just as Yu Qingfeng was cursing, 2 figures came from afar. It was a man and a woman. First update. Chapter 292. They're all at the nascent soul stage, not them. Yi Shanshui had already spoken when Yu Qingfeng had yet to lock onto their auras. It was impossible to trigger the heavenly punishment in the Sky City. It was not a problem to go from the early stage to the intermediate stage, to the mastery stage, or even to the half-step nascent soul stage. It was an undeniable fact that Chen Hao was at the golden core stage. It was Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan who had rushed over. Let's go in, okay? In the void hundreds of miles away, 2 faint gusts of wind drifted between heaven and earth. Following their conversation, they silently began to move towards the entrance of the ancient city. The 2 of them were Chen Hao and Chen Shui. The 2 of them had been here for a long time, but they did not enter. They had no choice. Their strength was inferior, so they could only temporarily avoid it. Yi Shanshui's aura was really powerful. Moreover, it was not just Yi Shanshui alone. Chen Hao and Chen Shui knew very well that they were not Jian Wufei. If they were to appear, no one in the Eastern continent would help them except for the Ling Tian sect. With just the 2 of them, it was absolutely impossible for them to fight against Yu Qingfeng's group. Even if it was Yi Shanshui alone, the 2 of them would not be able to fight against him. The gap between a half-step nascent soul stage genius was too big. Therefore, they could only conceal their aura. Fortunately, the 2 of them had cultivated the heart technique to merge with everything in the world. Otherwise, they would not be able to enter the core of the ancient city. Hiss hiss. At the outermost area where the Southern Sea Archipelago disciples gathered, Chen Hao and Chen Shui quietly chose a corner far away from the crowd and entered the light screen without anyone noticing. The reason why they chose the Southern Sea Archipelago and not the Eastern continent was naturally because they had their own plans. Be careful with your senses. You don't have to sense those at the half-step nascent soul stage. After the 2 of them stopped, Chen Hao transmitted his voice to Chen Shui. I know. Don't worry, Chen Shui said confidently. This was the only thing she was stronger than Chen Hao in. When Chen Shui began to sense, Chen Hao also carefully released a trace of undetectable soul fluctuation and began to sense the auras of the few sects in the Southern Sea Archipelago. Know yourself and know your enemy. After a period of observation, the 2 of them were clear about the experts they might face after entering the core of the ancient city. As long as Yu Qingfeng came into contact with someone, the 2 of them had to control their aura. They did not need to consider the half-step incarnation realm because even if they encountered one, they could only hide. However, he didn't let go of any nascent soul realm cultivators in the middle stage, late stage, or even the peak of the late stage. A super genius at the pinnacle of the nascent soul stage was not someone that the 2 of them could match up to. However, if they were to encounter one, they would still have a chance to launch a sneak attack. You want to kill us? Then you better pray that you stay away from us. Although they couldn't fight them head-on, their powerful perception and concealment skills made them natural killers. Being forced to hide the head and show the tail was a very stifling matter. Therefore, it was impossible for him to not get some interest back. What's more, this was a chance to make a fortune. In less than a few minutes, Chen Hao and Qin Shui had already grasped the breadth of all the targets. Soon after, the two of them silently arrived at the area where the Western mainland disciples were located. Junior sister Lan Lan, junior brother Duan, you're finally here. What about Chen Hao? Is he not with you? When Xia Lan Lan and Duan Yufei arrived among the Ling Tian sect disciples, everyone surrounded them. Zhao Yuanqing lowered his voice and asked, "Nope. Senior brother Zhao, everyone, let's not talk about him first. We'll talk about it when we get back to the sect." Duan Yufei lowered his voice and said solemnly. After that, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Xia Lan Lan. "Lan Lan, don't look around, oh." Xia Lan Lan quickly retracted her gaze. "What's going on?" Zhao Yuanqing frowned slightly and asked through voice transmission. "Many people in the Southern Sea Archipelago and the Western mainland want to deal with Chen Hao. Even we can't protect him," Duan Yufei said through voice transmission at that moment. Initially, Duan Yufei and Xia Lan Lan did not know about this at all. However, when they were about 10,000 miles away from the core area, they found out. This was because Chen Hao had borrowed 2 pairs of communication talismans from him and Xia Lan Lan. When they invited the two of them together, Chen Hao briefly explained the reason why he did not enter the entrance with them. However, at that moment, Duan Yufei and Xia Lan Lan did not understand how Chen Hao could hide from their eyes. "Fuck, it's about to open. Chen Hao, that brat, probably won't dare to come. With such a temperament, there's nothing to fear." When the light screen began to violently tremble, Yu Qingfeng and Jian Wufei, who was sitting in the crowd but still had their eyes locked on the outside, cursed out loud and thought disdainfully in their hearts. Jian Wufei, who had comprehended the will of the Sword Dao, had notified the people in the sect to search for Chen Hao. However, she did not request for the people in the sect to kill him. She would climb back up from where she fell. Only by defeating Chen Hao with her own strength and killing him would it be in line with her will of the Sword Dao. At the same time, Chu Qingtian of the Eastern Mainland's Yuan Gate and Gu He, who was second only to Gu Xing in the Floating Mist sect, frowned slightly. After entering the city in the sky, they had been looking for Chen Hao and Qin Shui. However, the two of them seemed to have disappeared. None of the disciples in the sect had seen them. Chu Qingtian, Gu He, and the others had guessed that the people Yu Qingfeng was waiting for were Chen Hao and Qin Shui. After all, with Yu Qingfeng's cultivation and aura, it was very likely that he was in the same region as Chen Hao and Qin Shui. However, they could not be sure. As such, they had been paying attention to Yu Qingfeng and the #1 expert of the Southern Sea Islands, Yi Shanshui. At this moment, when Yu Qingfeng couldn't help but mention Chen Hao's name, they were finally certain of their guesses. Just as the mysterious aura of the light screen was getting thicker and thicker, a few exclamations suddenly sounded from a corner where the Eastern Mainland cultivators were, attracting everyone's attention. "Isn't that Chen Hao and Qin Shui? Why did they suddenly appear? I thought something had happened to them. I didn't expect them to be here already. What powerful concealment skills." The few disciples that were closest to Chen Hao and Qin Shui discussed with surprised expressions. Chen Hao and Qin Shui looked at each other and revealed a faint smile. The two of them had expected to encounter such a situation when the light screen was activated. The miraculous teleportation light pillar was still too mysterious for them. It was absolutely impossible for them to maintain the state of merging with all things in the world. "That's him. Brother Yi, Brother Han, that's Chen Hao. He's the one who killed Shangguan Yang, Han Ji, and the others." Yu Qingfeng's furious voice suddenly sounded before Chen Hao and Qin Shui's aura was released. "What a beautiful woman." Yi Shanshui's eyes instantly locked on Qin Shui, who was in a blue dress. Although she was covered by a black veil, the translucent veil could not hide her beautiful little face. "Killed Shangguan Yang, Han Ji, and the others?" Yu Qingfeng's angry voice was transmitted into everyone's ears. All the disciples in the Southern Sea Islands who didn't know about it opened their eyes wide in shock. Who were Shengguan Yang and Han Ji? They were top geniuses who were similar to Yu Chengfeng. Almost in an instant, everyone thought of who the two words, waiting for someone, could be. Even the disciples from the Western continent and the Eastern continent were shocked when they heard the names of Shengguan Yang and Han Ji. Especially the disciples from the Eastern continent, they gasped in astonishment. Although they didn't know Shengguan Yang and Han Ji, they were super geniuses who ranked at the top of the test. Even such geniuses were killed by Chen Hao. What did that mean? Everyone from the three forces was surprised. However, before they could react, the dazzling light instantly enveloped everyone. Hiss. More than 1,000 cultivators disappeared at the same time in the violent spatial fluctuations. Phew! The transmission this time was beyond Chen Hao's expectation. Although he had no concept of time and seemed to have lost his consciousness, the moment he walked out of the transmission, Chen Hao clearly felt that the whole transmission process was definitely more than any of the previous ones. It was probably more than 10 minutes. After letting out a long breath, Chen Hao began to look at the surrounding space. There were continuous mountains, colorful clouds, dense forests, and all kinds of strange flowers and plants. In the distance, he seemed to vaguely see a mirage-like palace. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the entire space was purer and denser than outside. Moreover, the aura of demonic beasts was stronger too. What made Chen Hao even happier was that the entire space contained a mysterious aura. No wonder it's the best place to cultivate in the Sky City. In a month, I might be able to improve my grasp of the law of heaven. Buzz. At this moment, the communication talisman that Chen Hao borrowed from Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan vibrated violently. With a smile, Chen Hao crushed the communication talisman and received the information in it. Not only could the communication talisman transmit information, but it also had a magical positioning function. Of course, the value of this kind of communication talisman was much higher than that of ordinary communication talismans. The reason why Chen Hao borrowed it was to meet up with Qin Shui. After all, in the transmission of the Sky City, even if they hugged each other, they would be separated. Chen Hao and Qin Shui, who were nearly 10,000 miles apart, turned into gusts of wind after locking onto each other's direction and converged with each other at lightning speed. The ancient city area was only 100,000 miles in radius, and more than 1,000 people were scattered in it. In fact, it was just a drop in the ocean, but that was referring to ordinary people. For over 1,000 Golden Core Realm and Nascent Soul Realm cultivators, it was rather crowded. Especially for Chen Hao and Qin Shui, who were besieged on all sides, they had to be extra careful. Everyone in the South Sea Archipelago, you should have seen Chen Hao and Qin Shui. If you see either of them, inform me immediately. I, Yishan Shui, will not treat you unfairly. As the leader of the South Sea Archipelago, Yishan Shui did not need Qingfen's urging this time and directly used the group transmission talisman. Chapter 294. Yi Shanshui's promiscuity was well known in the Southern Sea Archipelago. Up until now, he had ruined countless beautiful girls. He even had more than 10 Dao partners. Even when he came to the Sky City this time, he had 2 beautiful Dao partners with him. Compared to him, Yu Qingfeng was not on the same level at all. Yi Shanshui was tempted the moment he saw Qin Shui. How could he let go of such a beautiful woman? The Western Mainland's Heavenly River sect and people related to Jian Wufei were also looking for Chen Hao and Qin Shui. However, they were not as exaggerated as Yi Shanshui. Of course, the Eastern Mainland's Chu Qing Tian, Gu He, and the others were no exception. Buzz. Just when Chen Hao was flying, the communication talisman vibrated again. This made Chen Hao slightly puzzled. However, when he took out the communication talisman, he immediately understood. Duan Yufei had given him this communication talisman before he entered the Sky City. This should be a message for the Ling Tian sect disciples to gather. Chen Hao hesitated slightly but did not break it in the end. Once he did, the leader of the Ling Tian sect would know his location. Of course, he would also know the leader's location. However, Chen Hao did not know him at all. He did not even know what kind of person he was. To be safe, he did not open it. Of course, the most important thing was that Chen Hao did not have the slightest intention of seeking shelter from the Ling Tian sect. Moreover, they could not protect him anyway. In less than an hour, Chen Hao and Chen Shui, who were not far away, separated from each other. Otherwise, both of them would not be able to sense each other's presence. Soon, both of them locked onto each other's aura and gathered together. Let's go. We've been locked onto in such a short time. Let's leave this place quickly, Chen Hao said immediately when he saw Chen Shui in a blue dress. Chen Shui nodded her head with a solemn expression. Her perception was more powerful than Chen Hao's. She knew that she and Chen Hao had only released their auras for a short while, but they were locked onto by 3 auras. Moreover, they were closing in on them at a shocking speed. It had to be said that there were too many people who wanted the two of them dead. In this space that was only 100,000 miles wide, there were probably hundreds of people who were their enemies. Moreover, there were many experts that the two of them could not fight against. Chen Hao, this place is only 50,000 kilometers in radius. It's really too small, and we have too many enemies. Unless we meet someone who is alone and not that strong, we can't do anything at all. Rather than running around to avoid being hunted down, it's better to find a secluded place to cultivate. This place is undoubtedly the most suitable place for cultivation, Chen Shui said. Indeed, our strength is still too weak. Increasing our strength is the key. It was estimated that all the disciples of the large sects were gathering here. They should also know that cultivating here was the most important thing. I believe that no one will come looking for us. Let's do that, Chen Hao responded. When Chen Hao entered this space, he already had this plan in mind. Although he would definitely be able to kill quite a few of those fellows, he would still be able to assassinate them. But other than being able to obtain some things, there was not much practical use. Rather than wasting time on such meaningless battles, it was better to use this precious 1 month to improve their own strength. Those ancient palaces, let's not go, Chen Shui said. We can't go even if we want to. There are probably not many of these palaces. It must be the places that those 9th-rank sects fought for. It's just some treasures and secret techniques. We don't want them. Let's go. Piss. The two of them merged into the heaven and earth and quickly went into the distance. Chen Hao said it casually, but in fact, he was very depressed. If he was a nascent soul cultivator, how could he be so depressed? Strength was everything. Only the fastest way to improve one's strength was the way to go. Gone? It's too difficult to find them with such powerful concealment skills. What a waste of energy. It's better to meet up with the people from the sects and cultivate in peace. Sensing the disappearance of Chen Hao and Chen Shui, within 200 to 300 miles, 3 masters at the peak of the nascent soul stage in 3 directions said secretly. The 3 of them were all masters of the Southern Sea Islands, and they were also the ones who received Yi Shanshui's call. Of course, they just happened to sense Chen Hao and Chen Shui's aura nearby. In such a holy place for cultivation and a place full of danger, no one was willing to waste energy on looking for people. What's more, they were very clear about how powerful Chen Hao and Chen Shui's concealment skills were. After Chen Hao and Chen Shui found a hidden cave, they carefully opened up 2 more exits from the cave and sealed all the entrances and set up layers of restrictions. After doing all this, the two of them entered their respective caves and immersed themselves in cultivating and comprehending without any distractions. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the huge cave, Chen Hao had already excavated a huge space with a radius of thousands of feet and set up layers of seals and aura concealment enchantments. At this moment, Chen Hao stood in the middle of the cave and swung his sword. Stab, reverse strike, reverse chop, spin swing, sweep, side slash. Every sword was stabbed out with all his strength, and they were all the basic sword moves of the solitary sword technique. They were all fused swords. What he wanted to do was to completely fuse the solitary sword technique, platinum sky splitting slash, sword intent, and space attribute mysteries. Every sword and every movement must be perfect and become his instinct. Not only did he need to comprehend it with his brain, but he also needed to comprehend it with his body. Only in this way could it become his instinctive reaction. The reason for this was that Chen Hao realized it when he was facing the fast sword attack of Sword Dance Fei. If he could do this at that time, why would he need to focus on catching the opponent's flaws? There was no need to waste any time on catching the opponent's moves, and he could naturally make the most accurate instinctive attack. This was the highest level of the solitary sword technique. Such a consumption was absolutely enormous. After every 9 swords, Chen Hao's energy would be exhausted. It had to be said that following the increase of his level, Chen Hao's attacks became stronger and stronger, and the consumption of energy also became greater and greater. 9 swords of fused swords was his limit. Luckily, Chen Hao had a large amount of spirit spring. The recovery time was greatly reduced. Huff! After exhausting his strength once again and exhausting all his energy and true essence, Chen Hao let out a long breath and jumped naked into the spirit spring that was 10 feet in radius and 10 feet deep. It's been 10 days, and the sword intent has only improved a little. It seems that the heavenly Tao law here has no effect on the sword intent. Only fighting can improve it. What Chen Hao wanted to improve the most was the sword intent, but in 10 days, although the fusion of the basic sword moves of the solitary sword technique was still not perfect, it had improved a lot. The true essence of the space attribute, and even the true essence of the wind attribute that Chen Hao did not cultivate, had improved a lot. There was a faint trend of a breakthrough. The density of true essence had also increased by about 10%, faintly reaching the limit of Chen Hao's half-step nascent soul stage. But the sword intent was still at the second level of the sword path. It's not bad. Chen Hao slowly closed his eyes. When he recovered his true essence, it was also when he fully sensed the heavenly Tao law. In the crazy cultivation, another 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Voila! Chen Hao jumped out of the spirit spring naked. No, I must fight. Chen Hao's eyes shone with a strong fighting spirit as he gritted his teeth and said, after 20 days of crazy cultivation, he clearly felt that his progress was getting smaller and smaller. Faintly, he had reached his limit in all aspects and entered a bottleneck state. There was not much meaning in continuing to cultivate like this. Only fighting. This. After sending out a wisp of his mind, Chen Hao, dressed in a blue dress, appeared in front of him not long after. Her long hair was wet like a lotus flower emerging from the water. I've reached the bottleneck and need to fight. What about you? So fast? Chen Shui was slightly surprised. I'll accompany you. If you haven't reached your limit, you don't have to accompany me. Just wait for me here, there won't be a problem. Chen Hao said confidently. Well then be careful. Chen Shui said after a slight hesitation. She was very clear that although her cultivation realm was higher than Chen Hao's, her true combat strength was definitely inferior to Chen Hao's at this moment. Furthermore, there was a gap. Even if he encountered a half-step incarnation realm, as long as he did not fall into an encirclement, Chen Hao should not be in danger. If you have a situation here, send a message to me immediately. After Chen Hao finished talking, he directly turned into a stream of light and disappeared in front of Chen Shui. Leaving Chen Shui and going 10,000 miles or so, Chen Hao released the aura around him without the slightest scruple. Come on, as long as it's not half-step incarnation realm, all die for me. Chen Hao said with lofty sentiments in his heart. He wanted to kill the demonic beasts and obtain the spiritual herbs. Unfortunately, 20 days had passed and the aura of the demonic beasts seemed to be very weak. Along the way, he did not encounter any cultivators. Needless to say, most of the treasures that could be plundered had been plundered. Moreover, most of the cultivators should have found a place to cultivate and entered it. What he could look forward to now was that after someone sensed his aura, they would come over on their own. Secondly, he would go deep into the core area where the demonic beasts were extremely powerful. Lastly, he would try to enter the palace. Entering the palace was obviously not possible at this moment. If there were no accidents, it would have long been occupied by the powerful sections. Chen Hao had been there for a full hour. As Chen Hao continued to go deeper, there were still no cultivators who came to find trouble. This made Chen Hao, who urgently needed to fight, want to take the initiative to find the hidden cultivators. But in the end he did not do so. After all, he did not have the potential to be a pure evil person. Just as Chen Hao was about to enter the core of this space and see a huge palace in the distance, a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared in his mind, as if it was calling out to him from the unseen world. Is it you guys? Chen Hao could not help but ask the mysterious existence and treasure hunter's sword spirit in his mind. What are we doing? Could it be my opportunity? Hearing the answers of the two fellows, Chen Hao's eyes suddenly shone with a hint of excitement. Third update. The fourth update might be a little late. Brothers and sisters who can't wait will see it tomorrow. We, Proud Heaven, are promoting it. Please give us some support, brothers and sisters. Anything is fine. Thank you. Chapter 295. That's right, this must be an opportunity that belongs to me. This is a battle of luck. Chen Shui and I have snatched the small cultivation grotto heaven and killed 6 top geniuses. Naturally, we will snatch their luck and condense it into our own. And it's all in the city in the sky. Since there is a test, how can it not be related to this palace? Chen Hao's mind spun like lightning, and he quickly confirmed his judgment. However, he did not move forward immediately. Instead, he restrained his aura and flew 1,000 miles away. He crushed the last communication charm and waited quietly. 2 hours later, Chen Shui met up with Chen Hao at the fastest speed. As Chen Hao expected, Chen Shui also felt a trace of summoning power. Boom, boom, boom. When Chen Hao and Chen Shui appeared 100 miles away from the palace like 2 gusts of wind, huge energy explosions continuously came from the palace in the void. At this moment, the palace was 1,000 feet wide and 50 feet tall. More than 30 cultivators gathered at the gate. The leader was Yi Shanshui, the commander of the South Sea Islands. He was in a white robe and his eyebrows were knitted tightly. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. It had been 20 days. It was fine that he did not receive any news from Chen Hao and Chen Shui. However, he had used his absolute strength to drive away all the people from the powerful sects in the core of the ancient city. After occupying the largest palace, he could not break open the dam gate. He had not been able to enter until now. Yu Qingfeng and the other disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley were all gathered here. More than 30 people had wasted 18 days on the gate. They tried again and again, but failed again and again. When they were exhausted, they meditated to recover and comprehend the law of heaven. When they recovered to their peak, they used their strongest unique skills to bombard the gate. They did not delay their cultivation. Otherwise, no one would be willing to waste time like this. There is no reason, absolutely no reason. We are the most powerful sect among the 3 forces, and I, Yi Shanshui, deserve to be ranked number 1. Why can't we break open the best palace? Do we still need to wait? Senior brother Yi, we've tried everything, but the restriction on the door is too strong. We don't know what material it is made of, but it's so hard that we can't move it at all. If this goes on, we won't be able to break it. I really can't figure out who has better luck than us. One of the half-step incarnation realm experts said with a frown. His heart was also extremely depressed. To be able to enter the palace, there was a certain amount of opportunity and luck, but the most important thing was strength. As long as they were strong enough, they could just forcefully break into the palace after occupying it. Many palaces were also occupied by powerful sections. Impossible! Our strength is the strongest, and our luck is also the strongest. There is no reason why we can't open it. After persevering for so long, how could he give up now? Perhaps it was a matter of time. Keep bombarding, Yi Shanshui said arrogantly. What should we do? When Chen Hao and Chen Shui arrived near the palace quietly, Chen Shui stared at Yi Shanshui, Yu Qingfeng and the others and transmitted her voice to them. When they stop attacking, we'll quietly go over and observe the situation. If we can easily break the restriction on the door, there will be no problem. If we can't, we can only avoid them. Damn it, it's actually this group of scum. Chen Hao said gloomily. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, when the disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley began to attack the gate again, the huge golden gate suddenly erupted with a dazzling light. An extremely terrifying aura and repulsive force surged out from the gate, followed by several shrill screams. The few disciples closest to the gate actually spat out blood one by one and were sent flying. At the same time, Chen Hao and Chen Shui revealed a look of surprise at the same time. This was because, although the originally faint summoning force became stronger as the two of them approached the palace, there was a limit to the growth. However, at this moment, it suddenly became 100 or 1,000 times stronger, and the two of them had an impulse to rush directly to the door. "Can we go in directly?" Chen Shui said in surprise. Of course. This is too fucking awesome." This sudden change made Chen Hao burst out cursing. The gloominess in his heart was swept away. As he spoke, the summoning force became even stronger and madly attacked Chen Hao and Chen Shui's souls. At this time, even without Chen Hao's reply, Chen Shui clearly knew that she was right. "Come, let's go to the door first. When I'm done, we'll go in together." Seeing that Yi Shanshui and the others were so shocked by the strange appearance of the door that they stopped, Chen Hao said excitedly, "You want to attack?" "Of course. Anyway, when we enter, they will definitely know that someone has occupied it. With the temperament of these people, how can they not guard it? Kill as many as we can." "But this..." The two of them were silent, but they rushed to the door as fast as they could. "What's going on?" Yi Shanshui and the others were looking at the disciples who had just been seriously injured, and asked with a trace of shock. One of them was a master of the half-step incarnation realm, but his face was still pale, and he was obviously seriously injured. Before those few disciples had the time to answer, two extremely terrifying and incomparably sharp auras suddenly erupted from the entrance. Especially one of them, the aura contained within it was so strong that even experts of the half-step incarnation realm did not dare to lower their guard. It was too sudden, and everyone had no time to react, including Yi Shanshui, who reacted the fastest. They did not have time to condense too much energy, and the only thing they could do was to dodge to the side as fast as possible. In the twinkling of an eye, a sword light that seemed to contain thousands of thunderbolts pierced through the two masters of the late-stage nascent soul realm who were closest to the door. As for the other sword light that was even more terrifying, it contained a profound mystery that made everyone feel shocked. The sword force guided, the sword chi pulled, and the sword force swept out. It carried the terrifying power of a spatial vortex, but it also contained an incomparably fierce sword intent. It was as fast as a swan, and everywhere it passed, there would be continuous screams. Even Yu Qingfeng, who was standing a few people away from the crowd, had an incomparably fast reaction, but he still couldn't avoid it. His eyes were filled with terror, and his eyes were wide open as he watched the soul-stirring sword rapidly expand in his pupils. An incomparably mournful and unwilling scream came out from Yu Qingfeng's mouth. Before his head exploded like a watermelon, he saw Chen Hao, who he wanted to kill even in his dreams, and the stunning beauty Chen Shui, who he wanted to obtain. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly and his cold eyes were fixed on the last moment of his life. His divine soul was destroyed. The Platinum Heaven-Splitting Slash was the basic cultivation technique of the 3000 Great Tao 5 Elements art. The mystery it contained could directly destroy the divine soul. At Chen Hao's level, as long as he could kill someone, there would be no soul left. This was also the reason why Chen Hao directly pierced the soul palace between his eyebrows. "Die for me." Yi Shanshui, who had the fastest reaction when he sensed the danger, he instantly retreated dozens of feet away. At this moment, he was extremely furious and attacked with the fastest speed. Wait for me to come out." Hiss, hiss. Chen Hao directly grabbed Chen Shui's small hand, and before Yi Shanshui's attack arrived, they merged into the bright light screen on the door, leaving the arrogant, domineering, and complacent words outside the door. Boom. Yi Shanshui's angry attack landed on the door. Without exception, even with his amazing combat strength, he was directly sent flying by the terrifying rebound force, and spat out a mouthful of blood. "It's so good, so fucking good." After entering the palace, Chen Hao was still holding Chen Shui's small hand tightly as he laughed excitedly. How could he not feel good about killing Yu Chengfeng in front of so many powerhouses that he could not compete with? Chen Shui's mood was also very good. It was just that the excited Chen Hao held her hand tightly. Moreover, as a woman, she didn't let her vent like Chen Hao did. Moreover, in her heart, she was more or less shocked by the power of Chen Hao's sword earlier. Just as Chen Shui was struggling for a moment and was about to break free from Chen Hao's hand, Chen Hao's deafening laughter suddenly stopped. At the same time, Chen Shui felt an extremely terrifying and boundless pressure. Almost in an instant, whether it was her or Chen Hao, they were stunned and could not move at all. Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at practically the same time. Their minds seemed to have been pierced by numerous sword lights that contained extremely terrifying and profound profundities, and their minds and souls fell into extreme pain and struggle at the same time. If it wasn't for the souls of Chen Hao and Chen Shui far exceeding an ordinary person, their souls would probably have dispersed at this instant. Chen Shui clenched her teeth tightly under extreme pain, and her pink and delicate lips were bitten to the point blood flowed out, yet she didn't feel it at all. The pain that came from the depths of her soul had far exceeded the limits of Chen Shui's endurance. Her soul seemed to have been shattered by the terrifying sword lights, and only a trace of consciousness remained. Gradually, when Chen Shui recovered a trace of her ability to think, the pain became even more heart-wrenching. She clearly felt as if she was within the terrifying sword lights of lightning. Every single one of these sword lights tore apart space and contained profundities that Chen Shui was utterly unable to imagine. It was the profundities of the spatial attribute and lightning attribute, and it was also the sword Dao and sword insight. No, to be precise, it was the profundities of the sword Dao. This was a comprehension that Chen Shui had never touched upon. After all, she wasn't even a swordsman. Nor had she comprehended sword insight. I definitely can't faint. I definitely can't faint, Chen Shui constantly reminded herself in her mind. Even though her consciousness was extremely slow, but the obsession in her heart made her understand that this was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and training. If she could endure it, then her temperament and cultivation would have an astonishing increase. If she couldn't endure it, what would the result be? Chen Shui didn't know if she would die here, but at least she knew that she wouldn't gain anything. Chen Hao and Chen Shui's situation was similar, but also different. The fourth update. Today is the fourth update. Tomorrow, I will continue to work hard in Dark Mountain. Thank you to the friends who voted for the book review. Thank you. To be continued. If you like this book, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 296. At the moment of the strange change, the sword light contained a terrifying aura that Chen Hao could not imagine. This kind of horror definitely exceeded Chen Hao's limit. Almost instantly, Chen Hao fell into extreme shock, and this kind of shock became stronger and stronger. Even though Chen Hao had a strong mind and had also been baptized by the sword light of the mysterious existence and the treasure-hunting sword spirit, he almost lost his consciousness in this kind of horror and fear. Immediately, after Chen Hao recovered a little of his ability to think, as a swordsman who had promoted his sword essence to the second heaven of sword principle, he clearly felt a terrifying sword principle will. At first, Chen Hao did not understand what kind of legendary sword principle will was at all because it would change on its own every once in a while, causing Chen Hao's remaining consciousness to change along with it, and he tasted all kinds of pain that Chen Hao had never experienced before. Time passed minute by minute. Under this kind of terrifying pressure and sword principle will, the physical body and soul of the two people were enduring an unimaginable test. Every minute and every second was as long as a century. It's the last day. Outside the palace, there were only more than 20 disciples of the coiling dragon valley of the South Sea Islands left. At this moment, after Yi Shanshui and the others tried several times, no one dared to attack the door anymore. However, they did not leave, and all of them wanted to strangle Chen Hao to death and ravage Chen Shui to death. Especially Yi Shanshui. Not only was Yu Chengfeng killed by Chen Hao right under his nose, but even the two beautiful women who came with him were killed by Chen Hao's sword. Women were his reverse scale, How could he not hate? How could he not be angry? This was a humiliation he had never suffered since his debut. At this moment, he, who was half-step to incarnation, and the surrounding junior brothers and sisters, all raised their auras to the extreme. They knew very well that today, Chen Hao and Chen Shui would definitely come out of the palace. Although they knew that the moment they came out might be the moment they left the Sky Castle, half a second was enough. In just a moment he could blast Chen Hao into powder. He would not even let Chen Shui go. Since he could not get it, he could only destroy it. This was because he knew that once the Sky Castle was out, with Chen Shui's concealment skills, even he could not do anything. As time passed, Yi Shanshui and the others became more and more nervous. Everyone held their breaths and circulated their true yuan to the limit, and could launch their strongest attack at any time. But, suddenly, an incomparably profound fluctuation appeared in the space, and pillars of light poured down, completely enveloping everyone. However, the palace's doors were still tightly shut. How is it possible? Could it be they died in the palace? They must have died in the palace. Damn it, he let them. The moment Yi Shanshui and the others disappeared from the Sky Castle, they all thought to themselves in despair. There was only one reason why he didn't come out of the palace, and that was because he died in the palace's trial. However, they did not know that thousands of miles away from the palace, two breezes that had merged with all things in the world suddenly appeared the moment the pillars of light appeared from the void. Chen Shui, who was wearing a blue dress, had a pair of beautiful eyes under the veil. She inadvertently emitted an aura that could destroy the world. If some cultivators were present at this moment, they definitely wouldn't want to do anything to Chen Shui after seeing her beautiful figure. It wasn't that they didn't want to, but they didn't dare. Even a late-stage nascent soul expert would not dare to have such thoughts because the aura in Chen Shui's eyes was too terrifying. Although she looked extremely weak at this moment, on the other hand, Chen Hao did not seem to have changed much apart from being weak. At least, there was almost no difference with him before he entered the palace. However, the corners of this guy's mouth curled up slightly with an indescribable smile. 10 minutes ago, Chen Hao and Chen Shui had already awoken from the terrifying pressure and their respective sword wills. At that time, regardless of whether it was their physical bodies or souls, they were extremely weak. After 10 consecutive days, not a trace of true essence was left. Moreover, it was obvious that they had suffered extremely serious injuries. Fortunately, after the pressure and sword Dao wills disappeared, the two of them were not ejected from the palace. Otherwise, they would definitely have died in the hands of Yi Shanshui. However, there was only 10 minutes. Even with the help of the Spirit Spring, such serious weakness and injuries could not be completely recovered. Fortunately, when the two of them tried to use the carving technique to merge with everything in the world to break open the wall made of an unknown material, they were enveloped by two different mysterious auras. Two completely different mysterious auras directly entered the space between their eyebrows, while the other two similar mysterious auras were familiar spatial fluctuations. In an instant, the two of them were teleported hundreds of miles away from the palace. The two of them had no time to be surprised. They naturally restrained their auras and quickly left the palace. Enveloped by the pillars of light, the two of them disappeared from the Sky Castle at the same time. The moment they appeared in the Mirage Desert, the two of them saw a flash of light and directly changed into two breezes and disappeared without a trace. Let's find a place to heal first and cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. In the void, Chen Hao, who had merged with all things in the world, said to Chen Shui, "Let's stay in this Mirage Desert. Those disciples probably won't stay here." Although the two of them had swallowed a large number of elixirs at this moment, they were still extremely weak and could barely maintain flight. At this moment, if they encountered a slightly stronger opponent, the two of them would not be able to resist. Moreover, the two of them had gained a lot in the palace. While their minds were still enveloped by the terrifying pressure and sword Dao wills, it was undoubtedly the best time to digest and absorb. At this moment, the two of them naturally held hands together. From the beginning of entering the palace to walking out of the palace, The two of their hands were stuck together like dog skin plaster and never separated again. Moreover, it was so natural that even Chen Shui did not realize it. 3 hours later, Chen Hao and Chen Shui were far away from the place where the sky castle appeared, which was a full 50,000 miles away. After confirming that it was relatively safe, the two of them dug out 200 feet deep caves on the huge sand dune and covered it tightly. They entered respectively and began to cultivate in seclusion. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Chen Hao and Chen Shui had already recovered to their peak state, but the two of them did not walk out of the cave and were still immersed in cultivation and comprehension. What a terrifying sword essence! Suddenly, Chen Hao, who was immersed in cultivation, sensed a powerful sword essence. Although the sword essence was not sword principle will, it contained an aura that shocked Chen Hao, who had just broken through to the third heaven of sword principle. Although the sword essence was obviously 2 levels lower than Chen Hao's and was only at the peak of the first heaven of sword principle, it seemed to have the power to destroy heaven and earth and actually contain the sword principle attribute. Could it be that she has obtained the destruction sword principle? Chen Hao opened his eyes and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. Even he was a little envious and jealous of him. He was not shocked that Chen Shui could emit the aura of sword principle will. After all, the terrifying pressure and sword light in the palace inherited the sword principle attribute. Especially at the last moment when the two of them came out, the mysterious aura that entered the space between their brows was a strand of pure and powerful sword principle will. Chen Shui could not emit it now because she had comprehended the sword principle will, but because she had activated the sword principle will that did not belong to her. Otherwise, it would not have appeared and disappeared instantly. Chen Hao was shocked because the sword principle attribute that Chen Shui had obtained was actually the destruction sword principle. At that time, his father was the first to speak of the destruction sword principle, so it was very likely to be the most powerful sword principle attribute, right? What about him? Until now, he had no idea what sword principle attribute he had obtained. Firstly, he had not comprehended it. Secondly, the aura of the sword principle attribute was impossible to comprehend. It seemed to be changing at all times. Every time he tried to comprehend it, it would cause Chen Hao's mood to change greatly and he felt as if he was going crazy. It felt as if he was facing a bitch whose mood was constantly changing. After a short moment of shock, Chen Hao immersed himself in comprehension once again. Fuck! However, not long after, Chen Hao cursed impatiently. He looked like he was unable to restrain his anger, and even the true origin around his body was circulating in an extremely terrifying manner. Chen Hao woke up from his anger and was really surprised. What sword principle attribute is this? It can actually affect my state of mind? Could it be the secular sword principle? Chen Hao guessed. Chen Hao did not have a deep understanding of the sword principle attribute. He only knew the names of several sword principle attributes from his father. He did not have a deep understanding of it. The reason why he could determine Chen Shui's sword principle attribute was entirely based on the meaning of the name. It should be, only in the secular world there are emotions and desires. I'm afraid only the secular sword principle can affect the mood of a cultivator. It shouldn't be. Chen Shui could comprehend the destruction sword principle because of her space attribute and thunder attribute, but why did I obtain such a bad one? The secular sword principle could not be compared to the destruction sword principle just based on its name alone. Moreover, when his father mentioned it, it was ranked in the last 2 or 3. It doesn't matter, it's better than nothing. I can only wait until I really comprehend it and see how powerful it is. It's almost time. I can't improve much in a short period of time, Chen Hao said. After he finished speaking, his mind moved, and an aura spread out and rushed to the cave where Chen Shui was. An hour later, Chen Shui came out of her cultivation state with a look of intense surprise. The aura around her was much more terrifying than 5 days ago. Moreover, this was an aura that completely belonged to her, and not the aura that remained in the palace on her when she came out. When Chen Shui came to Chen Hao's side with a trace of joy, she could not help but say, "I have sword essence." I sensed it. Congratulations, when you comprehend the sword principle attribute in your mind, You will definitely be more powerful. Chen Hao said. It seems to be the destruction sword principle? Qin Shui's understanding of sword principle was even worse than Chen Hao's. It should be. I don't know much about these. It's almost time for us to leave, Chen Hao said. First update. Chapter 297. Taishan City was the closest city to the Mirage Desert. Chen Hao and Qin Shui went to 2 different transmission arrays and waved goodbye. The Mirage Desert was not a good place for long-term closed-door training, and Qin Shui could not stay out for too long. Therefore, after making sure that both of them had recovered to their peak state and had completely consolidated their gains in the palace, they decided to go back. 2 days later, Chen Hao came to Huaxing City, the closest city to the Jiaxing sect. Huaxing City was only 40,000 miles away from the Jiaxing sect, which was not a distance at all for Chen Hao at the moment. Flying at full speed, in less than a quarter of an hour, a mountain peak that pierced the sky appeared in Chen Hao's eyes. After only half a year of experience, Chen Hao returned again, and he was already a master half a step away from the nascent soul realm. In terms of the speed of cultivation, Chen Hao seemed to be inferior to Fan Fong. However, at this moment, Chen Hao's reputation in the entire Eastern Continent's cultivation world had reached a level where it was like the sun in the sky. He had vaguely surpassed the super geniuses of the top 10 ninth grade sections. Even Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, and Wu Ruochen, who were half a step away from the incarnation realm, were suppressed by Chen Hao. It could not be helped. The Sky City ranked 6th in the test. When Chen Hao and others entered the Sky City, the disciples who were eliminated in the Eastern Continent spread the news throughout the Eastern Continent. And within a few days after the end of the trial in the Sky City, the news that Chen Hao had killed several top geniuses of the South Sea Islands began to spread. It was not an exaggeration to say that his name was known in the Eastern Continent. When Chen Hao came to the protective boundary of the Jiaxing sect, with a hint of expectation, he took out the sect token. After a wave of space fluctuations, Chen Hao stepped into the Jiaxing sect. You? Our senior brother Chen Hao? Among the several disciples guarding the gate, when the first one saw Chen Hao, he immediately showed an extremely respectful expression and seemed to be very surprised as he asked. Yes. Chen Hao glanced at everyone and nodded slightly in response. Other than the one who asked the question, who was the leader of the inner disciples, the others were all outer disciples. Senior brother Chen Hao is back. What a powerful aura. He's probably at the half-step nascent soul realm, right? I'm a disciple of the 100 dynasties ranking even earlier than senior martial brother Chen Hao. I really can't compare. Don't compete with me, or you'll be discouraged. Just compete with me. Brother Chen Hao is now famous in the world of cultivation. Even the disciples of the 9th grade sect can't compete with our brother Chen Hao. That's right, that's right. This is going to be fun. I wonder how senior brother Chen Hao will handle this. Who knows? As Chen Hao flew up into the air and flew towards the mountain peak he was on, several disciples behind him were discussing in low voices with extreme envy. Not a single word escaped into Chen Hao's ears. What to do? What do you mean? Chen Hao was slightly surprised. Don't tell me there's trouble as soon as I come back? Chen Hao couldn't figure out what trouble the star-picking sect could be in. At this moment, even the core disciples of the star-picking sect posed no threat to Chen Hao. What trouble could there be? Chen Hao unscrupulously released his telepathic senses. The star-picking sect, which used to be huge for Chen Hao, suddenly appeared clearly in his mind. The 3,600 mountain peaks of the star-picking sect were only a few hundred miles in radius. Chen Hao's telepathic range had now broken through 700 miles. The moment Chen Hao released his aura, the experts of the star-picking sect immediately sensed it. Bush, bush, bush. Several figures suddenly flew up from the mountain peaks and locked onto Chen Hao in an instant. Good boy, it only took half a year to reach the half-step nascent soul stage. His aura is even more vigorous and vast. Even the late-stage nascent soul stage can't compare with him. No wonder he could kill the top genius of the South Sea Islands. Several outer court elders were shocked when they noticed that it was Qin Hao from afar. The outer elder Wu Zichuan and the inner elder, who was also the elder of imparting skills, immediately turned into streamers after seeing Qin Hao and appeared in front of Qin Hao in an instant. "Qin Hao, you're finally back." When Wu Zichuan and the elder of imparting skills saw Qin Hao, it was as if they had seen their savior. "Greetings, great elder, Elder Wu." Qin Hao cupped his fists and said. However, there was a faint sense of uneasiness in his heart. The words of the disciples and the two elders just now made Qin Hao certain that something must have something to do with him. Moreover, it was something that even the two elders couldn't handle. "No need to be so polite. Hurry up and solve the problem in your backyard. Fortunately, you came back in time. The sect leader is not here. No matter how we interfere, we can't do anything." The elder of imparting skills said with a headache. "My backyard? What's going on?" Qin Hao asked in surprise. Since they were talking about his backyard, Qin Hao naturally thought of Helian Wuzi, who had already arrived at the star-picking sect, and Tan Tai Lien, who had yet to come out of the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. However, Qin Hao couldn't figure it out. According to Qin Hao's estimation, Helian Wuzi should be in the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven at this moment. Whether Tan Tai Lien came out or not, it was unlikely that they would meet. What could be wrong with his backyard? You probably don't know that Helian Wuzi is already in the late nascent soul stage, right? Tan Tai Lien also came out 2 months ago when the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven opened. When she came out, she was already half a step away from the nascent soul stage. The next day, she triggered Heaven's punishment and stepped into the nascent soul stage. Her combat power is amazing. Cough cough. Qin Hao was embarrassed. Helian Wuzi had already surpassed him in the secular world. This already made the arrogant Qin Hao feel a little embarrassed. However, Tan Tai Lien, who was in the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven, could actually advance to such a stage. This made Qin Hao even more embarrassed. Fortunately, his combat power was not as simple as the stage itself. Otherwise, he would just find a piece of tofu and kill himself. One had to know that they were not like Xia Yuyu, who was stronger than him from the beginning. Both of them were weaker than him. Since he stepped into the cultivation world, he was the only one who surpassed others. When had he ever been surpassed? This should have been a good thing that would have shaken the entire cultivation world. However, not long after Tan Tai Lien stepped into the nascent soul realm, probably because of you, the two of them actually fought and Tan Tai Lien was defeated. The Grand Elder continued. And then? Then Tan Tai Lien and Helian Wuzi agreed to fight in 2 months. The loser will leave the star-picking sect. Great Elder said. Sigh, although we elders, Little Ting, and the rest tried to persuade them, the two of them had already made up their minds and refused to give in to each other. It was useless no matter who said anything. Qin Hao, if I'm not wrong, it must be because of you. You should quickly go back and settle it. You can't let them fight. 3 days later is the date of their agreed battle. What should I do? What should I do? Qin Hao was in a dilemma. He excitedly returned with anticipation. However, the moment he returned, Qin Hao felt a headache coming on. Although he had already anticipated that such a situation would occur, it came a little too quickly, a little too sharply. Moreover, according to Qin Hao's understanding of the two of them, whether it was Helian Wuzi or Tan Tai Lien, they shouldn't be so intense. How did it develop to such an extent? A short distance of 200 miles was originally something that Qin Hao could cover in an instant. However, Qin Hao's flying speed became slower and slower. He was like an ox cart crawling in the air. He was really in a dilemma. This kind of dilemma should never appear on a swordsman. A swordsman's temperament was pure and sharp. No matter what matter or problem they faced, they would go straight to the heart without the slightest hesitation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to become a swordsman. However, Qin Hao was already a swordsman and could be straightforward and efficient in other matters. However, when it came to relationships, it seemed to be a minefield for him. In the past, Qin Hao's temperament was as firm as a rock. He was cold and emotionless. He had never experienced any relationship between a man and a woman. The current Chen Hao, after the soul fusion, had always maintained the necessary caution. He didn't dare to carelessly touch the relationship between a man and a woman. It seemed that there was a kind of fear in the depths of his heart. However, it was still inevitable that they would meet and become entangled together. The first Hellian Wuzi, the accidental encounter with Xia Yu, the chance encounter with Tan Tailian, uncontrollably, when he thought of these three people, Chen Hao's mind naturally surfaced Chen Shui in a blue dress. His head became even bigger. Wow! Senior Chen Hao, it's Senior Chen Hao. Senior Chen Hao is back. So handsome, so strong, so melancholy. Don't be love-struck, we are a match made in heaven. When Chen Hao's face was full of confusion and he was slowly flying in the air like an ox cart, some disciples who were cultivating on the mountain peak one after another raised their heads to look at Chen Hao. However, at this time, Chen Hao acted as if he didn't hear anything. It was as if he had fallen into his inner demon. Cough cough, Great Elder, it's more serious than we thought. Elder Wu and the Great Elder, who had already left, stared at Chen Hao from afar. Elder Wu said a little worriedly, "There's no other way. This is something that he has to experience. Sooner or later he will encounter it. It's just a little too early. He can only blame his talent for being too high, his luck is too strong, and he's too handsome. Such an outstanding person, if he's not cold-blooded, his luck with women would be frighteningly strong. His aura was originally at the peak of the half-step nascent soul stage, and he would soon be able to trigger the heavenly punishment, but now it seems that it will take a long time." Elder Chuan frowned and said, however, before he finished speaking, he suddenly exclaimed, as if he had discovered something. His eyes suddenly emitted two bright lights. At the same time, Elder Wu also revealed a shocked expression. What a profound and sharp sword intent, this? How is this possible? With such a sharp and profound sword intent, how can he hesitate? How can he be bound by feelings? Elder Chuan murmured in shock. Half a year ago, when Chen Hao went to train, he did not comprehend sword intent at all. Moreover, the two of them did not sense any sword intent from Chen Hao at all just now. But at this moment, Chen Hao, who seemed to have fallen into his inner demons, actually naturally emitted a sharp and profound sword intent as if he did not feel it. How could the two of them not be surprised? But immediately, the two of them, even Elder Chuan, revealed a look of deep confusion, because the sword intent aura on Chen Hao's body had magically changed. Since when could the sword intent aura change? Second update. Dark Mountain, continue to work hard. Try to finish the third chapter before 12 o'clock. Brothers and sisters who can't wait can read it tomorrow. Sorry, the plot changes, I'm especially slow in editing. Chapter 298. Chen Hao, who was immersed in thinking about how to deal with emotional issues, didn't feel anything unusual about himself at all. He was only thinking about how to deal with the relationship between Hellian Wuzi and Tan Tailian. The matter of the duel wasn't a problem. The problem was how would the two of them get along in the future? This wasn't a question of who was more important. Chen Hao didn't want to compare, and couldn't compare. To think that I was a great person in my previous life. A small emotional issue has already stumped me. Sigh, the feeling of being with Chen Shui is still better. There's no need to think so much. Chen Hao couldn't help but think in his heart. During this period of time with Chen Shui, perhaps because of the relationship between the two of them, but also because they weren't biological siblings, their interactions with each other were extremely indifferent and detached. They could do whatever they wanted. Even if they intuitively felt that the relationship between them was a little beyond that of siblings, they didn't really care. Everything was natural. Whatever, let's see what's going on with them first. Thinking of this, Chen Hao tossed aside his muddled thoughts. He, who was flying like an ox cart, suddenly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. At the same time, his aura also disappeared. Chen Hao simply didn't know and didn't care. His series of actions shocked the Elder Chuan Gong and Great Elder who were paying attention to him. Psst. A wisp of cool breeze quietly appeared on the mountain peak named after Chen Hao. As the owner of the mountain peak, Chen Hao didn't need to expend too much mental energy to easily control the situation of the entire mountain peak. What surprised Chen Hao was that Helian Wuzi's aura was actually emitted from Tantai Lian's palace, and Tantai Lian lived in a palace far away. What's going on? Chen Hao frowned slightly. He quietly sent out 3 messages and directly entered his own palace. In a moment, Yang Fan, Li Feng, and Ni Jianping entered Chen Hao's palace with a trace of excitement. Chen Hao, senior brother Chen, you're finally back. Li Feng couldn't wait to say as soon as he entered the door. Who is that Helian Wuzi to you? It's too powerful, too domineering. Cough cough. Chen Hao didn't expect Li Feng to say such a thing. Could it be that the two forces were fighting? Chen Hao felt depressed in his heart. Motherfucker, I just didn't show up when Xiao Wu and the others came over. That shouldn't be the case. What's going on? Tell me first. Chen Hao said, Yang Fan, you tell me. Yang Fan and Ni Jianping's expressions were relatively calm, far less exaggerated than Li Feng's. It was a small matter at first, but it turned into a big deal later on. Most importantly, it was because of you. Be specific. When Yang Fan told the story, Chen Hao was speechless. The fuse was actually Dongfang Jun and Mo Yui. Dongfang Jun was originally a troublemaker who made people feel that he deserved a beating. Chen Hao could still understand, but what made Chen Hao dumbfounded was that the blockhead Mo Yui was also involved. It turned out that after Dongfang Ting brought Helian Wuzi and the others to Chen Hao's mountain peak, she introduced them to Yang Fan and the others and brought Helian Wuzi to see the sect master. In the end, when Dongfang Jun and Mo Yui chose to live in the palace first, the two of them insisted that Helian Wuzi occupy Tantai Lian's palace. The reason was simple. Tantai Lian's palace was the closest to Chen Hao's palace, and it was in the right-hand position. Although Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Jianping knew that Helian Wuzi and the others were Chen Hao's acquaintances through Dongfang Ting, how could they let Helian Wuzi occupy Tantai Lian's place? After all, they had a better relationship with Tantai Lian. In addition, Dongfang Jun's words were as annoying as an idiot's. Although Yang Fan was very reserved in his words, Chen Hao knew that Li Yifeng, who could not hold his temper and was more protective of Tantai Lian, must be unhappy. In the end, it directly evolved into Dongfang Jun's arrogant provocation of Li Yifeng. How could Dongfang Jun be his opponent? But the silent Mo Yui was even more ruthless. The moment Dongfang Jun and Li Feng attacked, he directly drew his sword. The battle power of the two guys combined was actually unbearable for Li Yifeng. Could Yang Fan and Ni Jianping watch foolishly? Needless to say, Mo Yui and Dongfang Jun's faces were naturally bruised and swollen. It was a tragic sight. Of course, this was because Yang Fan and the others had a sense of propriety. They were not willing to seriously injure the two and just wanted to teach them a lesson. But they did not expect that the two of them actually had a desperate stance and would not stop no matter what. At this time, Helian Wuzi, who had met the sect master, returned. How could Helian Wuzi not care when she saw Mo Yui and Dongfang Jun being beaten up? Once she attacked, it became a tragic sight for Yang Fan and the others. They were directly suppressed by Helian Wuzi and could not even speak. And Dongfang Jun arrogantly let Helian Wuzi stay in Tantai Lian's palace. Then there was Tantai Lian, who came out 2 months ago. After hearing the news from Li Yifeng and the others, she was naturally incomparably furious. Who was she? She was already Chen Hao's woman. How could she endure the grievance of having her palace snatched away? At the same time that she was shocked by Helian Wuzi's strength, Tantai Lian directly triggered the heavenly punishment. After entering the nascent soul stage, she challenged Helian Wuzi. In the end, she did not expect that she would still lose. Just like this, the situation became more and more rigid. Now, if there was you, there would be no me. If there was me, there would be no you. Damn it, I said it shouldn't be. So it's all because of you guys. After listening to Yang Fan's statement, Chen Hao heaved a sigh of relief and said, both of them have entered the 7 Stars Grotto heaven, right? Then what are you waiting for? Why aren't you going to train? If you don't work hard, you will be surpassed by those two guys. Cough cough, we just came back. 3 days later is the battle between Xiaoyan and that Hellion Wuzi. Chen Hao, senior brother Chen, you can't let Xiaoyan be wronged. Li Feng said and paused slightly. But with your current strength, can you suppress Hellion Wuzi? That woman is really too domineering, too terrifying. I really can't understand how she could advance to the late stage of the nascent soul stage when she just came to the cultivation world. You don't have to worry about this. I have my own ways. Alright, all of you can go. After Chen Hao finished speaking, he directly disappeared in front of the three of them. He took the lead to walk out of his palace and went directly to Hellion Wuzi's palace. Seeing Chen Hao leave, Li Yifeng glanced at Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain and said, "Do you think Chen Hao can handle it? He should be able to." We are also in the middle stage of the Golden Core stage. Chen Hao is only half a step away from the nascent soul stage, but his aura is stronger than the late stage of the nascent soul stage that we have seen. At least, Chen Hao's aura is not as strong as Hellion Wuzi's. Moreover, Chen Hao obtained the 6th place in the Sky City test. His opponents were all super geniuses of the Eastern continent, including those from the 9th rank sects. It's not something we can imagine, Enai Jianpain said. After the three of them obtained the qualification to enter the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven, they had all improved tremendously. However, this time, they were only in the middle stage of the Golden Core stage and did not qualify for the Inner Disciple competition. Don't worry, he can handle it. Let's go. If we don't work hard, we may really be surpassed by those 2 arrogant guys. Why are the people from the Jinyuan Kingdom so abnormal? Let's go and train. Aren't we waiting for the results? Li Yifeng said. We shouldn't care about this at all. Relationship problems should be decided by Chen Hao himself. It's not right for us to do this. I believe he should be able to handle it. Chen Hao quietly entered the palace and came to the door of the cultivation room that was tightly shut. He used his aura that was integrated with all things in the world and easily broke the restriction on the door. Like a breeze, he floated into the cultivation room. A familiar aura floated in the huge cultivation room. Hellion Wuzi was dressed in a loose white training robe that was spotless. She was as cold as the moon and was like a jade guanine. She sat cross-legged and was immersed in cultivation. What kind of inheritance is this? However, when Chen Hao saw Hellion Wuzi, his eyes flashed with a touch of shock. Above Hellion Wuzi, who was sitting cross-legged, there was actually a faintly flickering illusory figure. This figure was extremely similar to Hellion Wuzi, but the mysterious aura it emitted was even stronger than Hellion Wuzi herself. Furthermore, it was an aura that Chen Hao was completely unable to understand. The power of samsara. At this moment, the mysterious existence that did not speak easily suddenly said with a trace of surprise. At least Chen Hao had not encountered anything that could surprise the mysterious existence. The power of samsara? This is the 4th possibility that you mentioned? Chen Hao was shocked. When he knew that Hellion Wuzi was in the late nascent soul stage, the mysterious existence gave Chen Hao 4 speculations. The most likely was that she had awakened the power of samsara. And now it had become a reality. That's right. If this little girl can completely control the power of samsara, she will be an extremely terrifying existence. If you've decided to make her your woman, you can impart the great samsara art of the 3,000 great ways to her when she reaches the primordial soul stage. With the power of samsara, she'll be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort. It's just that she's ascending too quickly in order to advance to the nascent soul stage. Otherwise, if she had steadily ascended to the nascent soul stage, her strength wouldn't be so weak. Chen Hao did not disturb Hellion Wuzi. From beginning to end, he blended into all things in the world and quietly felt the power of samsara in Hellion Wuzi's body. However, the current Chen Hao could not even catch a trace of the mystery contained in it. It wasn't until an hour later that Hellion Wuzi let out a long sigh of relief and opened her clear, cold, and beautiful eyes. There are still 3 days before the battle with her. I really did not expect it to develop to such a situation. Isn't it just the inheritance of the phoenix? Who does she think she is? Hellion Wuzi muttered to herself, and her little mouth could not help but pout. Even Chen Hao had never seen such an expression before. In fact, Helian Wuzi would only reveal such a delicate expression when she was alone. First come, first served, it should be me first. Those few people are really annoying. But if I really force her away when Chen Hao returns, will he blame me? Forget it, at most I will fight to a draw with her. Anyway, she is not weak. In order to keep up with Chen Hao's footsteps, I have improved too quickly. Annoying fellow, I just met him and he went to train. He doesn't care about me at all? Chen Hao was a little dumbfounded. He originally wanted to show himself immediately, but after hearing Helian Wuzi's muttering, Chen Hao did not dare to show himself at this time. However, he was completely relieved in his heart. This is more like it. Third update. Today is the third update. Thank you very much for your tips and votes. Thank you. Chapter 299. Xiao Wu is not a problem here. I didn't expect this girl to have a habit of talking to herself. It makes sense. She's always so cold and won't say a word for a few days. She'll suffocate to death. Even if she doesn't suffocate to death, she won't be able to speak. I'll go check on Xiao Lian again. As Chen Hao thought of this, he turned into a gust of wind and slipped out when Helian Wuzi walked out of the cultivation room. Originally, Chen Hao's direct appearance could still give Helian Wuzi a pleasant surprise. However, after eavesdropping on this little girl's inner monologue, if Chen Hao were to appear again, Helian Wuzi would probably be so embarrassed that she would be unable to show her face. In the blink of an eye, Chen Hao appeared in Tan Tai Lian's cultivation room silently. However, Chen Hao stood at the door and didn't dare to enter. He had no choice. The entire cultivation room was filled with terrifying flames and attacks. Obviously, Helian Wuzi was cultivating an attack-unique skill. Although it was awesome to merge with everything in the world, it didn't really disappear. It just completely concealed one's aura and figure. If there was an attack, it would definitely be impossible to escape. Moreover, this state restrained all energy. If one was carelessly touched, one could be seriously injured. The blue scorching heat filled the entire space. The temperature of the flames was beyond Chen Hao's imagination. It was the form of heavenly fire and was much stronger than Chen Hao's second-level heavenly fire. Even third-level or fourth-level heavenly fire couldn't be so terrifying. No wonder she dared to fight with Xiao Wu. This heavenly nirvana fire has probably reached the 5th level and is close to the great achievement. Moreover, it has merged with the 7-star unique skill. Staring at Tan Tai Lian, who seemed to have turned into flames, Chen Hao was slightly shocked. Especially the flame attacks that Tan Tai Lian launched time and time again were completely merged with the 7-star sword finger, 7-star sword technique, 7-star footwork, and 7-star sutra. It made Chen Hao feel as if he was facing 7 Tan Tai Lians. Obviously, Tan Tai Lian had completely refined the vital essence all over her body into the vital essence of the 7-star sutra. In other words, Tan Tai Lian had changed her cultivation to basic inner strength. That was the only way he could unleash such power from a 7-star combination unique skill. She only came out for around 2 months. How did she cultivate the 7-star lost art to such a level? In Chen Hao's opinion, Tan Tai Lian should have obtained the ultimate technique after breaking through the 7th level of the 7-star sword array and walking out of the 7-star grotto heaven. With only 2 months, not to mention Tan Tai Lian, even Chen Hao himself wasn't confident that he could cultivate the 4 unique skill combination to such a level. But Tan Tai Lian did it? How could Chen Hao not be shocked? However, Chen Hao did not know that in the 7-star grotto heaven, Tan Tai Lian's encounter was different from his. Chen Hao relied on his understanding of array formations to break the array. However, Tan Tai Lian did not have a freakish ability to comprehend formations like Chen Hao. She completely relied on brute force to destroy them. Destroying and deciphering were 2 different concepts. It was also because of this that the 2 of them had different encounters in the 7-star palace. When Tan Tai Lian destroyed the 1st level of the array formation, she obtained the 7-star lost art. As for the later levels of the array formation, Tantai Lien relied on cultivating the 7-star lost art to continuously improve herself so that she could destroy it layer by layer. Looks like I'll have to change my inner force secret art. The longevity art should only be a primary earth-level secret art. After stepping into the golden core stage, I've already cultivated it to the highest level and have almost reached its limit. When I step into the nascent soul stage, I'll have to choose another secret art of a higher level. Seeing Tantai Lien unleash such power from the 7-star lost art, Chen Hao thought of himself. The longevity art had accompanied him for many years since he started cultivating it. Chen Hao had never planned to change it. That was because he knew that inner strength ultimate techniques were precious. The biggest taboo was to change it back and forth. But now, the longevity art had obviously reached his limit. Chen Hao vaguely guessed that the expert who had spread the longevity art to the secular world must be someone like Huang Qi, who had tempered his temperament in the secular world. The reason why he didn't appear later was either that he had entered the nascent soul realm and didn't want to enter the secular world, or that he had perished in heaven's punishment. And this was the most likely reason. Phew! After more than 10 minutes, Tantai Lien, who was wearing the star-picking robe, finally stopped. The flames around her slowly disappeared. She sat down cross-legged and frowned slightly. Chen Hao waited for a moment. Unfortunately, Tantai Lien didn't talk to herself like Helian Wuzi did. After retreating to the door, Chen Hao knocked on the door of the palace and sent out a wisp of thought at the same time. A moment later, Tantai Lien opened the door of the palace as fast as lightning and looked at Chen Hao in a daze. Chen Hao frowned slightly, and his expression was cold. He didn't have the slightest joy of meeting. Instead, he seemed to have something on his mind. It couldn't be helped. Chen Hao didn't have any experience in matters of the heart. Before he knew what Tantai Lien was thinking, he could only put on a cold face and give her some psychological pressure. At least let Tantai Lien understand that he was very dissatisfied with their duel and conflict. He was very unhappy and didn't want to see it. He used the carrot and stick policy to serve her. He would give her a date after a slap. He would first put her in her place. Otherwise, if she was really bound by feelings, that wouldn't be what Chen Hao wanted. Tantai Lien's little face was originally filled with surprise, but after seeing Chen Hao's expression, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. Needless to say, Chen Hao definitely knew about her and Helian Wuzi. After being trapped in the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven for more than 2 years, Chen Hao had no choice but to truly unite with her because of her. More or less, Tantai Lien had some worries. Especially when she saw the domineering Helian Wuzi, this uneasiness was even more intense. Perhaps it was because of this that Tantai Lien didn't back down. She wanted to fight for her own position, but she didn't expect things to develop to this stage today. But now that she saw Chen Hao's expression, she regretted her rashness a little. Putting aside whether she could defeat Helian Wuzi, what if Chen Hao wanted to choose Helian Wuzi? "You're back," Chen Hao said. As he spoke, he walked directly into the palace. After sitting down, he stared at Tantai Lien and said with a slightly questioning tone, "What's going on between the two of you?" After hearing Chen Hao's words, Tantai Lien's heart thumped. Especially Chen Hao's tone and expression, it made Tantai Lien even more uneasy. At the same time, she felt extremely wronged. She bit her lips and said, "She snatched my palace first. Am I that easy to bully?" "That's because you're not powerful enough," Chen Hao said. "Should I be bullied because I'm not powerful enough? If you don't like me, I'll leave." Tantai Lien, who already felt that Chen Hao was obviously biased, instantly teared up when she heard his words. She felt as though her heart was being cut by a knife and said impulsively. After saying that, she flicked her sleeves and turned around, cough cough. Chen Hao didn't expect this woman to be so weak. He only said 2 sentences and she couldn't take it anymore? He didn't dare to hesitate and blocked in front of Tantai Lien. Without thinking, he said, "When did I say that I don't like you? Do I look like an irresponsible person?" "You." What Chen Hao didn't expect was that Tantai Lien's expression became even uglier. Her delicate body trembled as she stared at Chen Hao and said, "Let me go. I don't need you to be responsible for me. You don't need to be responsible for me. You only did it to save me, Chen Hao was slightly stunned and immediately understood what was going on. Fuck, she didn't say anything but what responsibility? Wasn't this clearly telling Tan Tai Lian that he had no feelings for her at all and only did it to save her? Well, Chen Hao's hands were like steel bars and iron hoops, stopping the struggling Tan Tai Lian. His expression finally became gentle and said, "Don't misunderstand. You should know that since I was willing to save you like that, naturally." Chen Hao paused for a moment. Because of his character, he couldn't say anything mushy in the end. He said directly, "Anyway, it's not what you think. It's just to be responsible. Also, when I said that you're not powerful enough, I wasn't talking about bullying or being biased. I just want you to understand that everything depends on strength. When you're powerful enough, you can take it back. I promise that I won't interfere. But a duel is a duel. Who allowed you to leave the star-picking sect? It's just a small matter and you're overturning the heavens. Why don't you have a duel to the death?" After all, Chen Hao was a smart person. Although he hadn't experienced any feelings, he found a way to deal with it as he spoke. His originally gentle voice became more and more domineering and strict. Tan Tai Lian gradually stopped struggling and turned her little face to one side. She bit her lip and didn't say anything. 3 days later, you two will duel. The winner will live in that palace. The loser will choose. If it's a tie, you two will live with me and fight however you want. When the winner is decided, you two will separate. Although your realm can't compare to hers, your aura is not weaker than hers. Don't say that I'm biased. The premise is that no one can kill me. No matter if it's me or you, the main focus is on cultivation. I don't want to be distracted by such a trivial matter." Chen Hao reached out and wiped away the tears on Tan Tai Lian's face, still speaking seriously. This guy already knew the strength of the two, especially Helian Wuzi's thoughts. Because of this, he said that if it was a tie, the two of them should live together. The two of them came to this stage more or less because of the relationship between Dongfang Jun and Li Yifeng. After they really got to know each other better and played around, it should be fine. "Okay, you continue. I'll say the same thing to her again." As Chen Hao spoke, he carefully observed Tan Tai Lian's expression and guessed what she was thinking. After confirming that his words were effective, he spoke again. After he finished speaking, he turned and left. But, smack, you bastard. Ha! When Chen Hao left, he actually fiercely slapped and grabbed Tan Tai Lian's little butt. Amidst Tan Tai Lian's screams and curses, he laughed and disappeared. This is also considered a carrot-stick policy? It feels pretty good. After stepping out of the palace, Chen Hao couldn't help but think proudly. After successfully taking a step forward, this guy felt that the problem of relationships wasn't as scary as he imagined. Didn't he successfully transfer it to cultivation? Part 1. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 300. Helian Wuzi's cultivation room was filled with a terrifying aura. Helian Wuzi looked at Chen Hao, who was standing opposite her, and snorted coldly. Her little face that was as cold as the moon had a trace of pride. "Don't force me." Chen Hao stared at Helian Wuzi and said extremely gloomily. Even Chen Hao didn't expect that the girl who was so obedient and cute when talking to herself, which made Chen Hao feel gratified and fond of her, would come to him openly this time. When Chen Hao came looking for her with the same cold face and the same big stick from the beginning, wanting to deal with her like how he dealt with Tan Tai Lian, this little girl actually didn't fall for Chen Hao's tricks and directly said, "Talk after you beat me." Wasn't this a blatant provocation? Originally, when the two of them met last time, they agreed to give Helian Wuzi a chance to take revenge a year later. But obviously, after the little girl sensed Chen Hao's powerful aura, she couldn't wait any longer. He was only a half-step nascent soul, almost one realm lower, but he already had such a powerful aura. If Chen Hao was promoted to the nascent soul realm, wouldn't that be awesome? She was very clear about how amazing the improvement from a half-step nascent soul realm to the nascent soul realm was, and Chen Hao was a dignified man, an awesome character of his generation. Last time, when he didn't have any chance of winning, he had already escaped once. This time, with his amazing improvement, how could he still have the face to escape? There was only a battle. But what Chen Hao didn't expect was that the solitary sword technique, the mysteries of space, sword intent, and the true essence of the wind attribute were all used to the limit, but they still couldn't do anything to Helian Wuzi, who was in the late nascent soul realm. All kinds of concealment couldn't escape Helian Wuzi's senses. Not only that, Chen Hao was still faintly at a disadvantage. He was put into a difficult situation by the reincarnation power and vigorous true essence contained in Helian Wuzi's moves. Of course, the most important thing was that this little girl was slightly shameless. She'd actually utilized the essence of the martial technique that Chen Hao had passed down to her, the life-risking technique of harming oneself while harming the enemy, to the extreme. Even if Chen Hao executed a despicable, shameless, and wretched move, it was utterly ineffective against this little girl. In this situation, Chen Hao's big stick policy was like a dog biting a porcupine, unable to bite down. It was impossible not to be depressed, and he had to admit that Helian Wuzi's battle strength had already reached a rather terrifying realm, especially the reincarnation power contained within. Although it was very weak, it also increased Helian Wuzi's battle strength by a large margin. However, the most important reason was that Chen Hao couldn't really fight with this little girl. Come, I'm not afraid. The treasure sword that Helian Wuzi held was still the low-grade spirit weapon, the moonlight sword, that Chen Hao gave her. At this moment, she pointed at Chen Hao without the slightest bit of fear, and spoke with a trace of complacency and provocation. However, in her heart, she was incomparably shocked by Chen Hao's strength. He was only half a step into the nascent soul realm. It's fine if I don't use my ultimate move, but if I use it, at least I'll be seriously injured, at most I'll die. Do you really dare to take it? Who are you trying to scare? Just use it. Fuck. Looking at Helian Wuzi's fearless expression, Chen Hao was so angry that he cursed in his heart. How could he attack? Chen Hao wasn't joking. After the fusion of the platinum sky-splitting slash, it was fine if he didn't use it, but if he did use it, it would be an absolute killing move. Even he couldn't control it. Why would he use it? But could he let Helian Wuzi continue to be so arrogant? Wouldn't that turn the sky upside down? This absolutely couldn't happen. I don't believe that I can't deal with a little girl like you. Chen Hao gritted his teeth and said. At the same time, he directly kept the sword. His figure was like lightning, and in a flash, he appeared within 5 feet of Helian Wuzi, waving his palm out. Helian Wuzi casually slashed out with her sword, and at the same time, she said rather proudly, "This is your ultimate move?" Chen Hao couldn't be bothered to say anything more to this little lass. In this kind of stifled state, the only thing he could do was to completely immerse his mind into the battle. Using the least amount of effort to obtain the greatest reward, he had to wear this lass down until she was completely drained of all her strength. At this moment, Chen Hao was immersed in the essence of Tai Chi, using force to attack force, and turning as he wished. At the same time, he continuously tried to integrate his sword essence, wind attribute profoundness, and space attribute profoundness into it. Since a dead pig wasn't afraid of boiling water, then he would use a slow fire to boil it until it was soft, boom, boom, boom. Gradually, Chen Hao's ability to turn something rotten into something magical was displayed once again. The use of softness to overcome strength became more and more magical. Even the stifled feeling in Chen Hao's heart disappeared. His state of mind had imperceptibly reached the state of being as kind as water, clear and not lacking in quick-wittedness. His entire person was like a spinning ball that was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. His combination of attack and defense was flawless. Although Helian Wuzi was proud, she didn't let it go to her head. Being able to awaken the power of reincarnation, she was originally very intelligent. How could she not see Chen Hao's intention? Therefore, when Chen Hao used this strategy, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and she was secretly happy. The reason was very simple. Although she didn't know that she had awakened the power of reincarnation, ever since she awakened it, Her breath was extremely long, and her recovery speed was even more shocking. This was her strong point. Although Chen Hao was a little abnormal in this aspect, Helian Wuzi believed that she definitely surpassed the current Chen Hao. How could she not be happy? As long as she also took it easy, the final winner would definitely be her. However, she wanted to take it easy, but Chen Hao didn't give her a chance at all. Once she relaxed a little, Chen Hao's obviously gentle attacks would become swift and fierce. Moreover, every move was shameless and aimed directly at her vital point, forcing her to use more and more energy. The stronger she was, the stronger Chen Hao would borrow, and the stronger she would have to bear. It was as if a vicious cycle had formed, and it was constantly worsening. Time passed by minute, and the entire cultivation room was filled with the flames of war and violent fluctuations. In the blink of an eye, almost an hour had passed. Helian Wuzi could clearly feel that her consumption was increasing. Fortunately, Chen Hao didn't seem to be any better. She could feel that Chen Hao's consumption was definitely not less than hers, and it might even be more. Moreover, she also gradually grasped a little of the profoundness of Chen Hao's unique skill, and it became much easier to deal with it. Therefore, she still had absolute confidence. The expression on her little face was rather proud. Helian Wuzi didn't know that Chen Hao, who was immersed in the profoundness of martial arts, was indeed incomparably shocked. One had to know that he was very clear about how abnormal his physical body's ability was, and also knew how strong his recovery ability was. However, Helian Wuzi's recovery speed in battle was even more astonishing than his. Chen Hao was certain that if he didn't rely on the profoundness of the unique skill to use his power to the extreme, the first to exhaust his energy would definitely be him, and not Helian Wuzi. After such a long time, he still couldn't take down Helian Wuzi. Especially when he saw Helian Wuzi's proud little face, Chen Hao couldn't control himself and became unable to calm down again. He couldn't wait to directly push this girl onto the ground and use all his strength to spank her, but as time passed, both of them were panting like oxen, drenched in sweat, and their faces were flushed red. Obviously, they had reached their own limits. Not only was there not much true vitality left in their Danton, even their essence, energy, and spirit had reached an extremely weak state. 2 hours. The battle had lasted for a whole 2 hours. It's time to make a move. Chen Hao clenched his teeth and thought to himself, "No, I must win against him this time, or else I won't have another chance in the future. I must win, I must win." Helian Wuzi clenched her teeth. The obsession in her heart made her break through her own limits. Persevering, she stabbed out her sword and attacked Chen Hao again, aiming directly at Chen Hao's chest. However, Helian Wuzi suddenly cried out in surprise. What she didn't expect was that Chen Hao actually didn't wave his palm this time. It was as if he had exhausted all his energy and allowed her sword to stab him, without dodging or avoiding. Immediately, Helian Wuzi didn't have time to withdraw her hand. When the tip of the sword was only half a meter away from Chen Hao's figure suddenly disappeared. At this very moment, when Chen Hao was sure that Helian Wuzi didn't have much energy left, he finally displayed the only ability that Helian Wuzi couldn't respond to, which was to merge with everything in the world. This seemed to be the only ability that he could display when he was at his limit. Originally, in this narrow space of the cultivation room, the two people's terrifying energy almost enveloped all directions. It was absolutely impossible to merge with everything in the world. In an instant, they would be exposed, and they would be in an immobile state. But now, there was no need to worry. Pa 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 pa. A nightmarish sound suddenly appeared in Helian Wuzi's ears. At the same time, what made Helian Wuzi feel ashamed and inconsolable was that Chen Hao, this shameless guy, actually displayed the ultimate skill that almost made her collapse back then when her energy was almost exhausted. Golden Snake's sticky hand. In just a moment, it entangled her tightly like a dogskin plaster. In the midst of Helian Wuzi's screams again, the two people fell to the ground with a plop. "Stop, stop, stop. You scoundrel. Let's call it a draw." "Stop. A draw? In your dreams. It's only been 2 years and your wings have hardened? If I don't show my power, you really think I'm a sick cat?" Chen Hao said arrogantly. The current him was not the him back then. In a situation where he had no energy, how could a weak and petite little girl compare to his majesty and might? Just by relying on his size, he could suppress this girl half to death. One hand unhesitatingly, shamelessly, and like a wandering viper, stimulated Helian Wuzi's sensitive areas and disturbed her mind, causing her to be unable to gather the last bit of energy. The other hand, relying on the strength of his physical body, directly flipped Helian Wuzi over. Lying on the ground, he began to spank her little but with a pa sound, especially when he thought of this girl's tsundere, complacent, and arrogance, which made Chen Hao invisibly spank her to his heart's content. He was in a great mood. Helian Wuzi was embarrassed and angry at the same time. At this moment, how could she still dare to let Chen Hao continue? She could only shout loudly, "I admit defeat, admit defeat. I'll listen to you, okay? But, you scoundrel! You dare to say that I'm a scoundrel? You're hurting me." Helian Wuzi was so angry that tears came out of her eyes. Both her hands were tightly struggling to cover her chest. She was embarrassed and angry. Who pinched people like this? Didn't he know that a woman's chest could not be tempered? That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.